Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Spearfactor. I'm doing it with a good friend of mine, Jon Stenstrom from Cast and Spear, and we're going to talk about everything under the sun. Um, I'm really excited for this one because if you follow me or John at all, like we always hang out together and we dive a lot together. So even though we hang out so much, I'm still learning stuff about you that I think is super interesting. And I was like, dude, I'm having you come back on the show because I want to share. This is kind of unique and interesting, and I think I think other people find it interesting too, other than just spearfishing and fishing stuff. Because John is way more of a fisherman than I am. Um, so, John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, John, we just got back from Baja. And it was a fun trip with my son, and all of that stuff was great. And it was really cool to get to have you be a part of that because you have my son's 17. He's going away to college in a few weeks. Um, and then you have your son coming in 13 months old. And it was kind of cool to share with you like a sneak peek of like that father son relationship in the teenage years. And then it's really cool for me because I don't have that to see you go through it all over again. And I kind of think of like, this is what it must be like to be a grandfather, where you get to like, you know, relive it, kind of looking at it like we were talking about with an older, more mature brain. Like we had said, like I was like, I'm 44 years old. If I could put my brain into you, young 17-year-old hunter, it would be like a fucking superpower just because of the stuff and when you're so young, you just don't have much of a direction, don't know, trying to figure everything out. But um, so John, let's go back before Cast and Spear, before um, any of that. And so where are you? You're from L.A., right?
Actually, I'm from Long Beach, so a
Ah,
little south of LA.
yeah.
Yeah, so most of my family is in San Diego. So every other week or so, since I was a kid, I would always be going down to spend time with family. So I'm half Filipino, half white. The white side's Swedish and German. We were more so in the Filipino side of things. My mom was Filipino, which is par for the course. Um, Nurse too, so she like hits all the stereotypes. And, she was born in Nebraska, so my grandpa was in the
Wait,
Navy.
hold on,
Yeah, it's
hold
all over the
on.
place, dude. Like, let me just break some barriers here.
Yeah. So hold on one second. The dog's barking, but regardless of that, um, is it your mother's side that's in San Diego?
Yeah, yeah, they're down there.
Okay. So all right, and then so continue on explaining your lineage here.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of funny. So my mom's side, my grandpa was in the Navy, so he was a little net fisherman boy in the Philippines, helping, they were just grabbing little fish and sold fish to make ends meet essentially. And then as he got older, he decided like, hey, if I into the US Navy, then I can, get out of here and go make a living. And then he, went in, enlisted, did that whole game. Actually, like met my grandma in one day, and I got married. So there's some like random stuff that I'm starting to find out, like the old culture, where it's like, you know, different families, the backgrounds. They kind of, one was Richie Ducci, one was more just kind of like more commoner, and then whatever happened, my grandpa met my grandma, brought them over, and then they lived in like Okinawa for a while. They lived in Nebraska and a bunch of other spots. So my mom was actually born in Lincoln, Nebraska. So it's always funny because it's like, oh, you're half Asian. Where's your mom from? It's like Nebraska for sure, born and raised, right? It's like pure American. Um, and it's funny because as they got older, like so, eventually they settled in San Diego, and that's where my mom met my dad, and he's from Iowa. So he, as soon as he got into college, he went to college Iowa State, and then as soon as he could, he got out of there and picked up a job at I believe it was Hughes, so in San Diego. Um, and that's where they met. So they lived in San Diego for a long time, and then for whatever reason, my aunt moved to Long Beach, and then they're like, "Oh, cool, we'll come up and live there." And then they bought a house in Long Beach, and then like that same year, my aunt was like, "Oh, we're gonna move back to San Diego." So I was like, I grew up as the lone kid in the family who was just somehow had to be an hour and a half north of San Diego, but my mom was like super close with all her siblings, and then we would just go down there all the time. Uh, yeah, so that growing up in a Filipino, it was kind of like this weird hodgepodge of like you had a little bit of Asian, but in the I learned this in college, but Filipinos, they the grandparents or the parents who came from the Philippines wanted to make sure that their kids assimilated as much as possible to, so that means like tried to not have an accent, didn't teach them Tagalog. And that was like kind of like pretty much what happened with our family. So I would hear Tagalog, which is like the Filipino language, but when people would ask me like, "Oh, can you speak it?" It's like, no, I can only say the bad words, like whatever grandma would say to me when she got mad. That's all I can remember. My mom didn't know anything in terms of how to speak the language. My grandpa was so he ended up being a um, master chief in the Navy, but all I knew, and I found that out pretty recently, but I knew he used to be a really good cook, and he cooked for like admirals and stuff like that. So he was like a chef or cook in the Navy. But that's the main memories I have of like my grandpa was he was just like a phenomenal cook. Like he would make this amazing flat meat, and pretty much all of our growing up was centered around food. So, grandma and grandpa would cook food. We'd always have these pretty big gatherings, and it was just a really good overall um, household to live in. I had mom and dad were great parents. I have a younger sister, and that was pretty much a childhood. I'm like, how deep do you want to go into it?
Well, I mean, so I was just thinking right now, your mom's side was obviously fairly big, you would say. I mean, we just
Yeah.
like,
She had a
and the,
brother and two sisters, and then each
okay,
one of them had two or three offspring. So we have a pretty decent sized little cluster.
and they all live in San Diego.
Most of them do.
Yeah.
Two of them, two of my cousins, they're twins. They kind of were the ones that my uncle was also in the Navy. He used to be something on nuclear subs. So he was a subs guy for a long time, and that made him go to Connecticut and then Portland, and then they are now in Texas.
Do you know what your grandparents were doing in Lincoln, Nebraska when your mom was born? Were they still in the Navy?
Still in the Navy. Yeah, they're still in the Navy. He retired after like 30 years, my grandpa. So he
Uh
retired
huh.
in San Diego. Um, I don't know
Right
too
on.
much about the whole thing. I think deep down that always made me want to kind of be in the Navy. Like especially I was one of my favorite movies growing up was Top Gun. So it's like I fell for that kind of hardcore, machismo, U.S. go U.S. kind of thing, and I kind of regret not going because I had like the 2010 vision. I knew everything about every plane growing up. I used to have airplanes on my wall. My favorite airplane was an SR-71. It's like I wish, like looking back, that's one kind of regret is I didn't at least try to go in there.
Yeah, I think you're one of many. I remember like a friend of my grown. I could send you pictures of us in camouflage BDUs or whatever at El Toro before they closed the base down. Like my buddy wanted to be a my buddy's a dermatologist. Mark wanted to be a fighter pilot. We had pictures of all the planes and stuff from Top Gun, and then he ended up being a part of his thing as a dermatologist in the Navy. Ended up being a flight surgeon early on. I don't know how it works for the doctor side, but yeah, he was like the one dude I know that like kind of did something similar to that. Um, was it? was it different? Because was it different being half white, half Filipino in your family? Were you viewed differently? I mean, I think it's kind of interesting what you said about how grandparents wanted you to assimilate in the culture, because a lot of cultures they want to hold on to their culture, right? Which leads to a lot of like especially issues where people marrying outside their race or their culture and all that can create a lot of drama. With your grandparents doing the opposite, did you ever have did you experience anything different just by being half Asian in your family?
I would say in the family, no, not at all. Like I think everybody felt, okay, we're all family. It doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
didn't even come up. It did come up for me like late in high school and then especially in college because I was so used to quote unquote being a Filipino because like my dad's side of the family, it was a really small family. They didn't really talk too much. It's not that they didn't care about each other, but it was more just like, hey, I'll hit you up on your birthday. And like growing up, we would go back to Iowa and I'd drive the tractors and we'd play in the corn. We had farms, so we'd play in the cornfields and all that stuff. Um, and it was great, but like it wasn't nearly as cohesive as the Filipino side. So I, just would gravitate a little bit more towards the Filipino. And then when you get to college, I'm like, hey, what's up, guys? I'm like, Filipino. And they're just like, who's this like white dude? Like, what are you talking about? Like, your last name down here, any Filipino? See, what are you talking about? Well, you got some pancit, you got some like lumpia. It's like all these like foods that I grew up on, but it's just like, I don't believe you because you don't look it. And then I was just like, wow, this is like totally different because I wasn't expecting that. And I actually like doubled down. So I was like the token white dude it was called like the Kaibigang Filipino group. And for 2 years in college, I was like, I tried to will myself to be a Filipino in the eyes of other Filipinos. It was just hilarious looking back at it. Um, and I was accepted. Nobody like kind of nobody discriminated against me or any of that kind of crap. But after a while, it was just like, why do I not look at the other side of me as much? And then that kind of like, oh, being Swedish and German is really cool. It's like being mixed is cool. Like, and then eventually I kind of just, I don't care. Like, I don't really have to associate with anybody. I'm just going to be myself. And that was kind of like a big turning point for me to be like, yeah, I'm just me. I don't care.
Yeah, I think it's funny as a white as a spokesman of the white group here. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually my grandmother was full Armenian, but like you, um, well, I mean, I went to Armenian weddings and all of that, but I'm pretty much a freaking white dude, man. So it's like for me to claim it, I feel like an imposter, you know. Even though I am Armenian, but um, I have I kind of noticed just with white people, it's just that we say white people, right? Like that's such a huge group of European. Well, I mean, if you look at European countries, they're all so different. So it's like by me personally or anybody out there who's a mix of so many different European countries, like we're so such a huge mix mash of cultures. We pretty much don't have one to really double down on. So it's like, oh, you know what? I'm just fucking me. I don't know. I'm an American dude. And which kind of sucks though, because you do see that. I could see like, I don't even, this isn't nothing to do with spearfishing, but, it's funny that I could see growing up where you're always trying to, and we talked about this before, you're trying to find a sense of identity. And it seems so easy for certain people because it's like, oh, they can be this or they can be that. They can jump right into their culture and really, double down on who they are. At least they get a head start of who they are because they can like, yeah, okay, I'm Filipino, or this is what this is. I'm expected. This is our stereotypes, if you will, our cultures, our customs, and all this stuff. And if you're white, you're like, I don't really have anything to cling on to. I just got to figure out who I am.
Well, I think that's just like human nature, to be honest. We're all tribal. It's a lot less mentally taxing to kind of find a tribe. There's like set beliefs and set ways to view the world, and it just makes life easier. Like I think we're always trying to find the simplest path, burn the least amount of calories and kind of survive. Uh, I just think you have to really be situationally aware of like you just said, just using the label white is just a simplification, but deep down there's 1,000 different permutation of what white means, and each one is complex, and you can go down rabbit holes and find something cool about every single one of them, and vice versa for almost for every ethnicity. So I think we're just mentally lazy, and it's just easier. I think and I do a lot of marketing stuff now, so it's like one of the tenets of the marketing side of the world is like find your tribe. Like, what is the smallest amount of people who believe a certain thing, so then you can have the right message to them, right? And it's like if you start looking at the world like that, you start seeing every group that you can put a label on, like anything that you do that you can put a label, like I believe in this, or I'm this, I'm whatever. That just means like anybody in like the marketing world, for example, can know at a glance kind of what your set beliefs are and talk to you in a certain way that will get you to do something using influence
Right.
and stuff.
That's a
So
good
that to me,
point.
it's just like when you look at that, you're just like, boom, oh wow. It's very hard to step out of those mental kind of like mental um keys, I guess. Like it's just you just fit like building blocks. It's like, oh, you can stack like 6 labels and then pretty much know exactly who you are, right? Just from like what you
Right.
believe in. Not that
Right.
there's a bunch of context and nuance, but I think that's just how we get through the world easier.
No, I think that's a good point. Um, super good point. I think, um, yeah, everybody wants to. I think maybe it goes back to some primitive brain stuff, right? You got to fit into a tribe in order to survive. Otherwise, you're the outcast. And you got to
I mean,
figure it
you're the
out.
animal guy. It's like how
Yeah.
many lone wolves? I think I watched something on Instagram the other day where it was like we all want to be the lone wolf, but how many lone wolves are actually alive after a certain duration when the group kicks them out of the pack? It's like it's very hard to survive on your own, and it's like if you're part of the pack, at least you have some support system there. And I think that's like inherent in everybody. It's like if you can at least have a couple people on your side, you can probably get a little bit further than just being that maverick.
Yeah, that's a good point. There was an IMAX on a dolphin. It was like, they have rogue animals, right? And it's usually a male that gets ostracized or kicked out or whatever it is, right? And then the males will go off and try to just animals in general. The males will go off and try to form their own herd, harem, whatever, right? Like group, school, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But the ones that don't, like this particular IMAX movie had a dolphin and it was going and just bothering tourists. Like, so this guy was assigned basically to go and keep it preoccupied and swim with it every day so it didn't bother tourists. But it was just a rogue male dolphin, and he had this relationship with it over years, But it shows you that even that animal was looking for some sort of belonging, if you will, through people. Like, didn't matter, but it needed that to survive. I mean, most social animals, especially mammals, um, and animals with a level of intellect, high intelligence, they need that socialization. They're complex creatures, and we're no different. I mean, yeah, I saw the same thing you're talking about with the wolf, and you're just not going to do real well. A single wolf trying to hunt, bring something that's not gonna do real well. um, yeah. So, all right. Well, moving on because that was pretty good actually. I like that. John's half
You know my whole life.
Filipino.
Yeah, you know my whole life story.
Yeah,
Well, that
it's
got that
cool.
got it to college. I mean, in college was I don't know if you want to keep going down that route or
Yeah,
if
let's
you want to
go.
go into other. School was tough. I mean, I went to UC San Diego, so I majored in mechanical engineering, and then after I did the whole kind of undergrad thing, I the economy was terrible. I graduated in '09, so it was just right after the '08 debacle, and at that point I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I took like a couple months and hung around New Zealand and Australia, and that was kind of my first little taste of on my own traveling. I went with my cousin, and we kind of just had a phenomenal time. I got to do both islands. Got to stay in Queenstown, which I thought was like the most epic town or city in the world at the time. I was like, oh my god, it's like the adventure junkies mecca, doing like 134-meter bungee jumps into the canyon, and eating good food. And at that time, the New Zealand dollar was like in the bottom of the barrel, so everything felt free at that time, which was amazing. And then we went over to Australia, and we did like pretty much the whole East Coast by Greyhound bus. So we started in Sydney, and then Greyhound busted all the way up to all the different beaches. We did a 3-day overnight cruise in the Whitsundays, which was like the most beautiful white sand beaches you'll ever see in your entire life. I think the silica is so fine and so pure that they used it for like the Hubble telescope lens, just because there's no like artifacts in there. I was like, oh, this is it makes sense. It's so it's like crazy white. We went fishing, did some surf fishing in Fraser Island. We did a couple of days on that island, and then eventually we got our way up to Cairns, and I was like, that place was just felt like Jurassic Park up there. We did a lot of Great Barrier Reef scuba diving, and that really kind of kickstart my love for travel. So I came back, got a master's in engineering, and then you know I would just try to figure out ways to get some time to travel wherever I could. And then I also, it's funny, I met Elon just like one time, shook his hand, was like, dude, you're like my idol. And I definitely drank the Kool-Aid. So after graduating, I was just like, I really need to start a company. I need to be like the next Elon Musk. So I was like, just diving into books. I think I was working for this company called Invitech, and they did consulting engineering in San Diego, but it was a Melbourne-based company. So it's like I had the Aussie culture. So I'd be talking to Australia like every day, and then we'd have our own projects, and it's really cool because I was this young kid who is an engineer, green as can be, but we saw so many different projects come through the door that I was able to work on like a whole plethora of things that like most engineers that come out of school, they work on like one thing or a couple things over multiple years, and then they get really good at that specific task. Whereas this was like, nope, new team every 2 to 3 months, and you're just seeing everything. But we had a lot of people come in from, who raise venture capital money, and like, okay, cool, we don't have the in-house engineer, so like we're outsourcing it to you. And then eventually just like, these guys don't really know what the heck they're doing, and we're the brains behind a lot of it. They might have the money and kind of like a direction of where they want to go, but they don't know how to make a product. So then I was just like, this is where the entrepreneurship kind of mindset came. And then I started reading tons and tons of audiobooks. Like every time I would be driving, I went through like 100 books in a year. It was just like, holy cow, like I actually like to read if it's stuff that I give a crap about. Before, I like never liked to read because it was just something that high school or middle school told you had to. And then as soon as you start reading stuff that you enjoy, you start finding a love of reading, which I think is a freaking superpower. I think everybody should be reading like every day. There's so much out there to learn. Uh, so then, yeah, I would just start like little side hustles and side businesses, and the whole goal was like, can you make your first dollar? And like growing up, I was always did some kind of like website, like back in the dial-up days, when my parents got this little Macintosh, and I remember getting my first check with some business that I built like one web page, and they paid me like $50, and I was like, oh my god, this is really cool. So then I always like had that as a hobby of like building little websites for whether it was like anime or whatever, how to draw, whatever, in high school. Um, so I was like, oh, okay, cool. The internet is still something pretty big, and um, so we just started like toying around with different ideas, and had a bunch of failures. And then eventually, I met this one dude, and he introduced me to this person that they were working with. They're like, oh, we have this like idea for uh, coming up with software, and this is like 2013, for how to figure out and predict where certain drug therapeutics would go and bioaccumulate in their half life in the body, so different tissues. And it's like when I went originally into college, it was supposed to be for bioengineering pre med. So I was like, oh, cool. Like part of me wanted to be a little doctor, part of me wanted to be an engineer, part of me didn't want to be an engineer because my dad was one. He's like, don't be one. But I was like, no, I think. And then somebody told me, he's like, if you can learn how to think like an engineer, you'll always be able to solve problems, and then you'll always have that kind of skill to go make money and go make a mark on the world. So it's like I had this kind of mix of the bio, mix of the engineering and entrepreneurship. So we kind of worked together, and we came up with this kind of like idea of like how we're going to take it to market. And it's pretty much like the early days of AI. Like AI is really popular now, but back then the concept of machine learning and deep learning were just like super early buzzwords. Like nobody was really talking about it. Now, if you say neural net, people know it's like, oh, that kind of stuff is what's powering ChatGPT and all this other stuff. But back in 2013, totally off the radar. And we raised some small amount of venture money. It was really weird because it's like one day we were in like my house working on like a pitch. The next day we submit it to like this incubator, and like 2 weeks later they're like, okay, here's some money. You have to move up to San Francisco. So I basically was just like, okay, let's take that. Let's take that chance. So moved up to San Francisco, and we worked on that company. Had a lot of issues.
What
We
year was
tried to
this?
really. That was between 2013 to like 2017,
Oh
and we
wow.
like pretty much became. I became like a workaholic. There's a lot of mistakes that we made. We tried to do the best we could. We did some pretty big projects. Like we had to do a pivot, like the whole uh, you know, predicting where drug molecules and nanoparticles were going to go in the body is like hot now. But it made the biggest lesson I learned from that whole ordeal of starting a machine learning company in the health space. It was that market timing is everything. So it's like it doesn't matter if it's a great idea. You can even say like, shoot, I have the cure for cancer, but it's like if you don't have the right timing and the right capital and the right team, like all these different things have to stack in just the right order at just the right time, and then you might have a chance. And I think that was really tough. I mean, we were working like 15 to 18 hours a day, sleeping at the office, like trying to get more funding, trying to, get client work done. It was just, I got pretty burnt out essentially near the end of it. And that's kind of how Cast and Spear got started, was because it's like, we were just like, we can't do this anymore. Like we turned down, we didn't turn down, we had an acquisition offer kind of fall through. And at that point, we're just like, we don't know how to keep this thing going. Um, and the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur is like knowing when to walk away, because some people would be like, if that's why it's like if you're going to start any kind of hard tech company, it's like you should be really like this problem should eat at you night and day, and you're okay never making money off it and working really hard. But eventually you're going to have to come to that like Jesus moment and be like, is this something that like I can sustain, that I can get it to where I want it to be? And not just do it for the money or any of those other reasons. It has to be deeper than that. So it's like the team was just like, oh, we don't know how if we have enough in us to keep this going, just because there were so many hurdles. It was like, I remember being 24, like I think 24, and I was like giving presentation on how machine learning and these kinds of technologies were going to impact the pharmaceutical companies, and like how this is how you're going to be doing like in silico modeling, which is just like computational modeling of how to figure out, are these drugs and are these compounds good and worth pursuing. It, it was just funny because it was just like I was pretty much laughed out of the room because they were like, "Oh no, that's what chemists do, and anything that you think computers can do doesn't have any bearing here." And now it's like there's companies that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars and have they're doing it now, and Google backs a lot of them, or even has internal teams at that. So it's just like it's kind of cool to be like on the cutting edge, but it's also like very challenging
Right.
and all that. So then Castasphere came out of it because I was just like, I want to do the exact opposite of what I just did. Like I never want to go and be put in that situation again. Um, it was just too hard for me. Like
Let
I
me
wish I could. Good.
let me jump in here real quick. I really want to talk about this, but before we jump into it, how did you meet Elon Musk? How'd that work out?
Elon was giving a speech at Scripps, and I had one of my boss had an extra ticket, and then I went, and then he was asking questions, and then there's just a meet and greet right afterwards. So then I was that young kid who just walks right up to him, and I'm like, "Damn, dude, you're kind of big." Like he was like a tall guy. I think he's like 6'2" or 6'3" or something like that, and just like big burly. And then he was just like, "Hey, what question do you have? Like, what can I do?" And I was like, I don't want to ask you anything. I just want to shake the man who's my idol." That's basically exactly what I said to him. And he was like,
Right
"Oh,
on.
cool, man." And I just shook his hand, and I was like, "Cool. That's just gonna be something that I got to keep." I was just like,
Yeah.
I had a feeling he's gonna be. I knew he was gonna do all the stuff that he's doing now. Like there's no brainer. Like I'm actually blown away by a lot of it, but like it was just cool. I'm a
Well,
big
what was he
Elon
doing
Musk
back?
fan.
What was he doing back then? Because I didn't know, shit about him before.
He was talking about solar, and I think that was early Tesla. I don't think he was talking too much at that meeting around SpaceX. So yeah, I mean he's all over the place, but I think that conversation was primarily around Tesla.
Okay. Now, you in college, you did different jobs, and we had talked a little bit about this before. I think it was college when you had that website, uh, Kendrick Lamar, right? Was your
Oh, oh, I totally
You got
forgot
to
about that.
tell that
Yeah.
story because that was good. That
Oh
I think it's
shit.
important, but it was good.
Yeah. Okay. So what really got my entrepreneurship juices is actually right before Kendrick Lamar. So my cousin, he's now the largest gardener in the world. Kevin Espiritu, Mr. Epic Gardening himself. But at that time, he was in, our basement in the garage playing video games and stuff and coming up with like little niche websites and just dabbling his toes in internet marketing while I was the 9 to 5er. So he learned how to do poker, paid for college through poker, and he just was always the guy who was, you could say, the black sheep of the family, but because everybody was like, why don't you just do the standard typical like life trajectory that everybody knows is successful, and he was like, no, I'm gonna go do this other way that I know other people are successful, but we just weren't privy to how to do it, so we couldn't speak on it. But I would just watch him, make a little bit of money here and there, like building websites. And I'm like, dude, I've built websites. Like I've built better websites than this. What's going on? And then he was just kind of showing like me how the whole game was done with like SEO, early day SEO. And one of his friends, um, well, first we were doing this thing called Blogs Advertise, which is basically like getting websites that up to a certain domain rank. And back then Google's SEO algorithms were super basic, so if you just got links from certain like quality sites and you get paid for those links to place them on a page, then those sites go up, and you get some money. So we were doing that for a while. I never really made, I think I just broke even on that one, but that kind of gave me a taste of like, oh wow, you can do something at night, and while you're at work, which I was, you would be making some money. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. So then the next thing is a friend of his came and said, hey, I got these fan sites for up and coming rappers, and I got one that's Kendrick Lamar. And at that time, nobody heard of him. He wasn't big, wasn't signed by anybody. And then we looked at the metrics, and my cousin was pretty much like, "Dude, if I had the capital for this, I would totally buy this, but I got my money tied somewhere else." And it was like nothing. It was like $3,500 or something. And I was like, "Dude, I got $3,500 laying around. Like, shit, who cares? Let's go." And I bought that site, and then he just kind of coached me on like what to do. And at that time, it was writing articles about what Kendrick was doing, like putting song lyrics. This is like before genius.com, like before, it was like really early.
It was like a
And then
fan
it's like,
page or something.
yeah, it's just a fan page. It's like
Yeah.
kendricklamar.org. And he was making like a little bit of money on t-shirt sales, like shirts that you come up with your own design. It was a site called Spreadshirt. They're still in existence, but you'd come up with your own novel Kendrick shirt, and then you'd be able to like, because you're getting so much traffic, you'd be able to sell to his fans who are the audience that you would who would buy merch, right? Um, so then like I had a buddy who was really good at graphic design, so I made a bunch of shirts and hats. And the cool thing about Spreadshirt is that you didn't have to have inventory, so you were just able to upload your design, and then if somebody bought a shirt, it gets manufactured and printed to them, and you would get like $10 commission, or royalty, not royalty, but kind of like a, I guess you would say commission. Uh, and then what happened was he got signed by like Aftermath and Interscope, and he just blew up. So it was crazy because the site was making maybe, like 10, $20 a day. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's making hundreds of dollars a day. You're just like,
Right.
holy cow, like, hey, I'm working this 9 to 5. And then I am also at night coming home and making blog posts and, trying to figure out what people are searching for so that I get more traffic. And then it's naturally selling t-shirts. And it was just like, wow, this is really cool. So much so that it was like making as much as my engineering job. And I was like, wow, this is like a whole new frame of thinking where you can buy something or invest time into something that pays you essentially like dividends going forward, right? And this is all digital. So it wasn't, the typical business model where you got to have a storefront, you got to, you have to do physical stuff. It was all online and all just happening in the ether, and you're making some money. So so I wanted more time to work on the site because I was like, well, if it's 50-50, I'd rather do the website than like the engineering job. And this is where I learned negotiation because I don't even know if I read the whole book. I think I might have just like took most of the understanding from the cover, but it was Seth Godin's Linchpin. And I remember, I think I listened to like a podcast or something about it, and it was like, if you're going to be at a job, you want to be so valuable that it's hard to fire you. And I took that to heart. So it's like I became the fire monitor. I became the machine shop guy who ran the machine shop. I was also the engineer. I had so many different roles that I knew for a fact, and this is probably not something that I recommend other people like do, but it was just hilarious looking back at it. I was like, it's going to take minimum 6 months for somebody to fire me, even though I'm junior, because they have to train to do all these other roles, right? That
Right.
I fix it. Like I do this. Sure, I'm green and novel, but it's like, who's going to run the machine shop when you only have a small group of engineers, and I'm the guy who does it? Or who's going to go through that 2 week training for such and such role? So I had enough of these stacked, and I don't know how I got the idea, but I walked into my boss's office and I was like, hey, I need to talk to you. I have this like, side business that's, working really well. But I still had that kind of like, I don't want to jump ship just yet because it was still new to me. So I was like, I really still want my benefits as a, my health benefits and all that stuff, and my 401k matching and all that. So what can I do to make that happen? Like I looked at the policy and it said that I need at least a minimum of like 20 hours a week to keep those benefits. So what I'm proposing to you is, I know it's going to take a long time to replace me for all these different roles, maybe 6 months. Give me 6 months at half my pay, full benefits, and let me work 2 10-hour days, Monday, Tuesday. And he said, yeah. And I was like, I was like, what? I was like, okay, fantastic. So I had this like 6 months, and I had a little condo apartment on the little strip of Mission Beach where it's like I just crossed the street and I was able to go surfing. So I had this reverse like week kind of mini retirement for 6 months where every day I would wake up, I would grab my surfboard, go get some surf. Nobody was around. I would come back, work on the website a little bit, and then at night I would just go out and hang out in PB or whatnot, just
Which
do
website is
debauch stuff.
this you're talking about?
This was the Kendrick Lamar stuff.
Okay, still. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was like I lived that life for like, I was like, so this is what it's like to retire early, and I'll tell you, you get bored of shit.
Oh,
Like
100%.
you get bored. I was like, wow, there's only so many days that I give a shit about surfing. Like there's only so many times that I care about going out, and at that time I didn't know enough of what I had in my hand with the site. Like I didn't know all the different funnels I could be doing, all the different tangential businesses, or maybe buying more. Like I turned down buying ASAP Rocky and a bunch of other people that blew up. Um, so it was nice, and I'm glad that it lasted that long. Um, but it was just like a learning thing where I was just like, okay, I'm not here to retire, not at this age. There's still so much more to do. So I ended up actually uh, going back to the engineering job for a little bit, which was a mistake. After the 6 months, and I was just like, yeah, this is not happening. That's when we started the startup. So yeah, there's just a lot of like random lessons, and I don't do a good enough job like journaling and taking all that kind of like knowledge forward. It's just I always thought like the good stuff sticks, but yeah, that was all interesting. You're bringing
What
me back
happened?
down
What
memory
happened
lane.
with that Kendrick Lamar website? As you told me, you
Oh
got a
yeah, dude. It
letter.
was. Oh yeah, dude. Knowing what I know now, I would have done things a lot differently. But at the time, I got my first cease and desist letter. It was because I didn't trademark his name, which would have been like an asshole thing to do, anyways. I don't even know if that was totally legal. But as soon as Aftermath and all those guys came in, then they sent the lawyers and like, hey, you can't be doing this anymore. And at the time, I should have just sold everything. It was like, all right, I'm done. I'm peacing out. I kind of just let it die. But it was kind of neat getting a couple phone calls from, I think his name was like Top Dog or whatever, and he was trying to be like, "Who are you? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, what are you trying to do? This is bad." And I'm just like, told him exactly what I was doing. He's like, "You know what? Respect. Thanks. Cool, man." Like, like it was just kind of like weird to like get the guy on my side. But he was like thinking I was just like this. He's a random guy. I'm like, no, no, this is just a hobby. This is something that I'm just trying to learn entrepreneurship, man. Like, totally
Some
didn't mean
kid.
to. Yeah, I'm just trying to learn the ropes, man. Try to make a little bit of money. I'm like, dude, you guys are loaded. So, never made enough money to even get on the radar, but it's just funny.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. He probably thought you were some white collar, businessman, and you're like some kid that's trying to hustle like everybody else.
I mean, for the longest time, I was practically his like pro bono, like face of like his management team, like the pro bono like internet version, because he had nothing. He had no website. He had nothing, and like people would go to my site because I was the one posting when his shows would be, like all the things that they were hoping to get from his site, they weren't doing it. So I was that de facto. Whether I was making a little bit of money here and there on T-shirts, I was like, I'm practically your marketing for you.
Right.
So
You're his
when I
PR.
put it that way, he was just like, oh, I respect that. And now that we have the actual management team, then you can't really do that anymore. Like that's fine. It ran its course.
Yeah. And then you had said to me in the car when we were talking about this, you said you were smarter or you would have sold him the website or
Yeah,
sold him
yeah.
the name.
That that was definitely worth like six figs, and I just kind of let
Yeah.
it die. That was a mistake.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of mistakes, man. Like there's a lot of money left on the table for sure. That's fine. I chalk it
So
up to that's learnings.
yeah, I mean, what you managed to do at such a young age was very impressive. Where I was just, yeah, trying to figure out who am I, and you know, going out all. I mean, I guess I was, anyways. Yeah, I was. I think got married at 25. So, with you though, you had used all that and you'd gone the engineering thing. What was it that made you jump into the cast and spear? Like, why cast and spear? Were you always into fishing growing up? I mean, what was it
Yeah, I
about that
practically grew
niche?
up fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I grew up fishing. My dad and I, every year since I can remember, I think I climbed San Gorgonio, which is like the tallest mountain in Southern California, at the age of 2. Like I think most of it was me just getting on his back. I vaguely remember, but like every year for at least two, like a week out of like the summer, my dad and I would go to the backcountry of Yosemite. So I've done everything in Yosemite. All the high Sierra camps. I've done them a couple times. We would go just whatever we could pack in, pack out. Bear canisters. I mean, we were doing this before bear canisters were a thing. I have stories where we're at Vogelsang and we brought food for a couple days before the High Sierra camps opened, and it's like that night, we put the bags over. It used to just be like a cable between two posts, and there was a knot, and then somebody had all their stuff on the side of the knot that it was supposed to be, so we didn't see that, and we threw our food over, and then it's like we wake up the next day and all of our food is just like ravaged, like scattered to a million pieces around underneath where we put it. And then we hear the story from the camp who was like, oh yeah, there's a mama and two cubs, and the cubs went up and climbed the pole and kind of shook the the cable until your food just kind of inched its way down, and then the mama was able to grab it, and then they ate the food. So it's like, and I just remember that was a time where I wrote a letter, and I think it was to Clinton. It was the first time I ever wrote to like a president. I was like, this is unacceptable. Like, I just got off the mountain and all my food was taken. And it was just like, my dad was like, yeah, go for it. And it's funny because I got that, pretty much a typical letter back that said, hey, thanks, we got your letter. And here's a picture
Right.
of
Here's an
whatever.
autograph.
Exactly. Which is just funny. But it was funny because, like, the year after, it was all coincidence, but the year after, it's like bear canister, like the metal ones started showing up. And I was like, oh, cool, my letter. It worked.
How old were you
So,
when you wrote the letter?
shit, I was young.
Because that might have been
Uh,
92.
yeah, it had to be in the 90s for sure.
Yeah.
I was born in 87, so
Oh,
92 would be a little
damn.
early. I was probably like 8, something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a 7 or 8. Um, yeah, we did half dome when I was 8. That was crazy. Uh, just I just remember being up there and all these like adults would be like, "What is this kid doing?" It was before people did like the harnesses or any of that shit. It was just just walk up. My dad's like, "Well, he's not freaking out like you are." So my dad was
Yeah.
pretty cool. But he would always bring a fishing rod, and that's when so ever since I was little, I would always go for trout in the backcountry, and I would be very terrible at fly fishing. My dad tried it one year, and he always got snagged, so he hated it. But he would make what I called like the Johnny rig, which is like a clear bobber that you can fill with water, and then had a very light leader and a fly. And I used to just slay, catching the trout. And I like to eat them, so my dad would always like bonk them and gut them, and I always thought that was gross. But I was always like, that was like the pride of the trip, was like, was I able to get like one or two trout to eat. And then back at home, my uncle Mike, uh, he passed away, which sucks. He passed away when we were in middle school, but he was like the fisherman of the family. Like, so my grandpa was the OG, right? He was the guy who casting nets in little tiny boats in the Philippines. So he always loved fish. But my uncle Mike, he was in San Diego, and it was before the whole Mexico passports and stuff. So I think he lived in like Chula Vista for a long time. So he was able to just go straight across the border. And I have stories where he would go into Mexico on the charter boats or whatever, catch a bunch of tuna, come back home, be so tired that he didn't even bother like filleting them or doing any of that. He just like stuck them in the freezer and left the freezer door open with the tail sticking out. And he was like, I'll get to him when I get to him. But he would always take us surf fishing. So my cousin, his sons, and myself, and we'd always go to like Torrey Pines, and we'd go for like the guitar fish and the corbina and things like that. So surf fishing was like, for a long time, like my absolute love. Like, I love just throwing Carolina rigs, little sand crabs. Didn't do anything super crazy, but it was always effective. But my cousin Kevin, who does the gardening stuff, he told me when we were in college that, because he went to UCSB, I was actually supposed to go to Santa Barbara with him, and that was like another regret. I last minute bailed on him and went to San Diego. But he would say that he would go in the kelp beds out off Isla Vista, and he was like, dude, it's the scariest shit in the world. And I was like, dude, that's pretty freaking crazy. Like, what do you like? That's nuts. Like, why would you ever do that? Um, so fast forward, I was working. No, what was I doing? Uh, oh, I was dating my girlfriend, who's now my wife, but we were gonna do a trip to Malaysia and Singapore, and I already at that time did the Great Barrier Reef a couple times, scuba diving, and I was like, oh, this is really fun. This is really pretty. So I was like, you have to get scuba certified so we can go diving when we get to Malaysia. And I forced her to go through Pacific Wilderness up here in LA, and we did like the winter sesh, and she's like turning blue while we're out there trying to like do all the tests and things. But we both passed, and we get to during that class, one of the guys like was a spear fisherman, and then one of the guys was a scuba guy. And I don't know why the spear fisherman was there for the class, but he was just talking, and I overheard him, and he's like, "Hey, you look like you like to do more crazy stuff than scuba." And I was like, "How can you tell?" And he's just like, "I just got that vibe." He's like, and then he shows me his phone, and it's like the day before he like caught this like 60-pound white sea bass, and it's him in his wetsuit holding it up, and he's like, "That shit is what you should be doing." And I was just like, "Okay." I think his name was like Theodore. He's in the Fathom Airs, I think. But that kind of got me into that, like, oh, I had no idea that you guys can do this stuff, and I really want to do it. And at that time, like Cast and Spear was just like I already had it up. It was just little fishing things here and there, like just kind of starting to document what it's like to go from being a tech dude back to nature. And I just started writing articles again just to have a blog, like an outlet. And then I started writing about like spearfishing, like really basic stuff. But I was just like taking all the knowledge that I had from watching my cousin do like the internet marketing and the blogsy type stuff, and he was just like, just pick a passion. You don't have to be great at it yet. Eventually, by the time you look back 5 years from now, you'll probably be really good at it. So just start now, because it's better to start now than start later, and just kind of like keep grinding. And that's basically how it kind of started, was just me sharing a bunch of things. Um, and then it just turned and started morphing, because it's like you start getting some traction, you start getting some eyeballs, you start meeting cool people, and then it's like I always looked at it as you write about something, and then that's how it's almost like a time capsule. It's like how you see the world right now, and then hopefully the next time you come back and update it, you'll learn a little bit more, and you just keep kind of having it as like a knowledge bank for yourself and to help others. Has been kind of like how the whole Cast Spear thing is. And then it's migrated more into video, because I think video side of things is just the medium that we're all kind of going to gravitate towards anyways. It has more information and more emotion that you can share than purely just writing. But yeah, that's kind of Cast and Spear in a nutshell. Was the big turning point was when I was like, oh, I should really take this serious. It was like right when I was really like trying, like contemplating like everything. I was standing on the edge of the lake after I was fishing for bass in Texas at my aunt's lake house, and I was just like, this is what I used to do as a kid. Like, why am I so anti this like lifestyle? Like, why do I have to do this other thing, like this whole techie thing? Like, that's not how I was raised. Like, nobody's asking me to do that. It's like, why'd you go down this path? And it kind of just like, I was like, oh, I'd rather go down this other path, or at
That's
least try
that's
it.
really funny, John, because this weekend, I was in Indiana fishing. My one of my nieces, she's 9, and she's like kind of similar to my youngest daughter. She wants to be outdoors, so it's like, hey, we go catch snakes, Uncle Brett. I'm like, yeah, let's go catch some snakes. Hey, can you take me fishing? Can you take us fishing? Like every day. It was like, and it was funny because we went, in the middle of the day. I'm like, this is really a bad time. Never mind the fact that it's like 89 degrees and humid, and the bugs. But I was like, we got to come back tomorrow morning, or come back in the evening time. So we came back in the evening time. Sure, sure enough, it's bluegill, sun, like crappie. It's like heaven. As soon as you throw it in, it's like bam, 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 bam. And then I caught some bass. And it was funny because I was there with these kids, my daughter, my two nieces, actually, one of them 6. And here I am, 44 years old, and I go, this is how it all started for me. This whole falling in love with fishing for me, because I started in freshwater as well when I was, and I think I said this before, when I was 3 to like 6 years old, my dad had a job transfer, and we moved to Nashville, Franklin actually, and we had a golf course pond in the backyard. And every day I'd get out of school and I'd go to stand on this like sewer drain thing and I would fish every day. To me, the back then, I don't know, maybe it was like twice a week, but it was the exact same thing I was doing. Fast forward 44 years later, and I was like, it's not a 20, 30, 40 pound yellowtail, but like in my heart, I am truly smiling because it's like we're planting this seed for these kids, but also here I am and I'm enjoying the hell out of it. And it's a, quarter-pound bluegill. And it's just such a cool thing to realize, like, to remind us all, like, where we started and our true love of fishing isn't about posting shit on social media. It isn't about putting the 100-pound grouper in the boat. It's really just doing this. And it was like the most purest thing to me. And I remember just casting, and I haven't really freshwater fished in a long time, but it was just like it never left. It was just like, here we go, hit, and showing the kids how to rig up, and you can kind of get creative how you rig things because they hit everything half the time. But it was such a cool thing, and it sounds kind of similar to what you're talking about. Just that honest, like just the purest form of us doing fishing to me. It was just like I get teary eyed thinking about it because it was so cool because I like was a 4-year-old little kid, you know, and that's when it all started.
Well, it's kind of funny to me because I really just look at people as kids trapped inside of an adult body.
Yeah.
And it's like how happy you are is how close you are to your kid self. But so much of us have been like inundated with all this stuff that pushes us so far away from what our young inside kid wants to do that we just get resentful or like don't have as much happiness and fun. So, you hear all those people who, if you could just figure out what getting back to what the kid wants, then it's like life just magically gets better. And I've also seen read about it in like psychology books where they're talking about your subconscious really doesn't uh, kind of grow more than the first like 5 years or 4 years. So it's like to me, then that really means like we're all 4-year-old kids. It's like we do have this extra layer that allows us to be adults and whatnot, but when you get grumpy and angry and tired and sad and mad, it's like
Yeah.
having my 1-year-old have a tantrum at me today. It's like you can't express it, so it just comes out as like a cry. But it's just interesting. It's
My
all
wife would
it's
agree
like
with
just get
that.
back to being a kid.
Yeah.
Figure out what you want to do when you were a kid, and just go do that.
Yeah. It's funny, man. It was the most bizarre thing because I'm like, honestly, part of me was like, I shouldn't be enjoying this right now because it's a small, little,
It's a
stupid little
waste of time.
fish,
Like,
you
who
know?
cares in the grand scheme of things?
And here I am with these, like, these little kids. And it was just like, I, they're enjoying it. I think I'm enjoying it just as much as they are. And I'm like getting giddy because one of them caught like a solid, 10-inch bluegill. She's 6. And I was like, oh, that's legit, and it was just funny. I think, yeah, I don't know. It's just wild. And I'm like Southern Indiana. Like, what the hell am I doing here in somebody's 10-acre pond? Just, and I'm just thinking about ways to come back. Like, there's got to be catfish. There's got to be this. I'm like, oh, here we go. Yeah. So with Cast and Spear, when when we first met, you had mentioned your website, and I didn't realize how big of a thing it was because I never really pay attention to much. Not, I never did back then. Now I definitely do. But to the popularity of your website, like if I go to your website, because I was looking at yours and then looking at mine and trying to see, like, okay, yours is obviously more, you're so far more down the road than I am. So it's like, okay, I got to see how you do things. Maybe that make it look a little bit better like this, simple. But you have such a ton of, um, I guess, blog post. I mean, just a ton of information, and then that ton of information drives, because you have so many blog posts, drives up, helps drive up your visits to the website, that helps advertisers, and then that drives money. But there's a whole other side of things too, which is the SEO. So, can you explain the SEO stuff a little bit?
Yeah, I can give you the whole playbook if you want. Um, yeah, so a website, like a blog, isn't like, I think the term blog, it has connotations and people's heads like, oh, that's just like a hobby, it's a gimmick. Um, Basically, Google runs off of content that it tries to match the person searching in Google with the best article that satisfies their search intent. So that means like if I'm looking for a how to catch bluegill, you know, Google's job is to give 10 answers that you will likely click on. And most people, like 60 or 70% of people, don't click past the first uh, search thing, first blue link. So you're trying to get to the top one or two positions. You do that through SEO. SEO is primarily just content, which is like the written word, images, video, packaged in a way that satisfies that search intent and leaves people happy. And then the way that you rank higher in Google, the most basic way was how many links you had in the past. Now, a lot of this has changed over the last couple years, if not longer, with algorithms like machine learning algorithms. So, like in theory, YouTube and Google and all this stuff, they analyze every word, every frame in a video, every piece of audio, and they try to train the computer to look at it as like a human ish sort of thing and be like, okay, that's quality. And then we're going to rank that one higher. So SEO is just kind of, it's evolved so much, but could you write an article so good, quote unquote, that Google thinks that it's the right article to show somebody? Now, the problem that, and I've gone down this path and I'm not even that happy about it. Like, it was just what I felt like I had to do at the time. And looking back, it's kind of, I made some mistakes. When I first started looking at how people were ranking in, because Cat and Spear's been around for like 6 years. So in the beginning, it was like me just writing what I wanted to write about. And then I was like, wait a second, if I'm going to do this, take this seriously, I really need to understand the SEO game. There's on-site, off-site. I don't want to get too much into the weeds unless you want me to go there, but basically, you have to look at the competitors. And for a long time, the competition were people, usually not in America, writing in a way that the computer or the algorithms that Google was running on your webpage thought, okay, it's pretty much gaming the system. But I would write these pretty decent articles, but I would never outrank them because how many keywords they put in there, how often those words were there, what was the sentiment of the language, all these like random things that you have to kind of think about. They gamed it, they knew it. So I had to start making content that, kind of modeled their content just so that I can play in that first page and then hopefully build up enough trust so that it didn't matter as much. Because when you start any website nowadays, you're kind of fighting an uphill battle because of all the content that's already out there and all the competition. So like now I'm at a like weird little middle ground where, if I put something up, I don't have to play by the old rules. And thankfully, Google has been changing a lot of things to where it's a lot smarter now. So it's actually looking for more human, good quality, like real world experience for the articles. So I'm actually in the process of like really going through all my old stuff and like axing shit that I think is trash now and kind of doing a refresh of the whole website. But yeah, that's basically SEO in a nutshell. It's like, can you make good quality content that people want to read? And then do you have enough authority through links or PR and stuff like that?
The stuff that you said is trash? Is that trash because the algorithm won't look at it as anything but trash? It won't even like as the keywords, or is it just trash as in you need to redo that article because you write like crap, or wasn't like like it wasn't?
Yeah, I mean, there's sometimes where there's like, I mean, over 6 years, you try different things, to kind of rank higher and whatnot. So there's like a big swath of time where I had multiple writers, and they weren't the best writers in the world. I tried to get them to do the best information possible, but I wouldn't pass the quality level that I have established now. So like going back would be like you make that assessment. Is it something worth salvaging or is it something worth cutting? And that's where you can you could be adding extra paragraphs, you could be adding a whole new article, you can just let it go. So it just depends on the article.
Yeah. You had kind of explained that to me before, and you had just mentioned that you had writers. So you were going full in, like employing people to. I remember you had said it before. I give them a packet. This is what I want the article to be about. This is the information I want in the article. Here it is. Write it. And that's pretty much what you were doing.
Yeah, so I mean, I took a lot of the lessons I learned from running businesses in the past, and a lot of businesses, what separates them from like a hobby and a business is the ability to have kind of like a spec, having your standard operating procedures, how you do things repeatable, right? Like why is McDonald's such a huge franchise? Is because down to every nook, like every second, people know exactly what they have to be doing. They can take somebody right out of school, drop them into the system. Within the first day, they could get to work, and by the end of the first week, they're doing pretty well, right? The same has to be done with like any business that you run yourself. So I would have like a full process of how do you create an article? Well, you first usually have to go use certain tools, figure out what your competitors are ranking for that you want to rank for. Are you even able to rank for them? Looking at keyword difficulty, then you would take that, and then you would you do some due diligence. Like, what is this keyword actually like? What are people like searching for? What is the search intent? Are the top three people doing it a good job? Where can you improve it? And then you would take that lessons learned, you'd package it into like a brief, and it'd be like, here's the title, here's the URL, here's like the outline of everything that all the competitors put in their article, and then here's all the stuff that is missing. Make a better article. Because Google is kind of like how Amazon works. Like if you look at Amazon, you'll see a bunch of the same products because a lot of people just like take it from Alibaba in China and they'll just put it on Amazon and then they'll change the marketing a little bit. And the reason why the price is so low is because Amazon is basically putting a whole bunch of people against each other so that they're just pretty much narrowing the margin that you can take until essentially the user gets the best, quote unquote, the best product at the lowest price, right? They don't give a crap about the sellers. They care about, are the customers happy, and they want the one stop shop. The same is kind of for articles. Google wants to put the absolute best article at the top. And, so if you go and you see like all the competition is doing it this certain way, and if I could just make this 10% better, you'll rank higher than them. Granted, you have all things being the same, like with the right trust and stuff. Now, there's infinite ways to game everything. So I'm not saying that, everything is crystal clear and your number one search result is the best. It's usually far from it, but that's kind of how the game is played at the top. Um, you know, and we're not even talking about pay per click. So it's like you can just leapfrog everybody if you just pay for the click. But the game is organic for as long as organic's going to be around. It's like free.
So you're talking about paying for click. What's that about? I don't even know about that.
Google Ads, right?
Yeah.
Hey, have you heard of Google Ads? That's pay per
Yeah.
click.
Oh, okay.
So basically, if I wanted to say you had phenomenal article on spearfishing and it was like spearfishing 101, you naturally organically ranked at the top. And then I'm like, oh, well, my article, it might not be as good, but I want that click for whatever reason. Maybe it's you're part of my funnel or, I want to sell you something. Then I would say, like, you'd go into Google Ads and they'd say, hey, that click is worth $5. So anybody who types in those keywords, they'll see my link above yours and then you click it. So, there's people spending millions of dollars a year, trying to get their link above their competitor's link to try to get that business if that business is lucrative, right? So it's like people would be willing to pay hundreds of dollars a click if I can get, X thousands of dollars of lifetime value from that customer.
Right, right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So what is your plan next with Cast and Spear?
I think I just want to grow it. Like I think that's just like I want to focus more on YouTube. It I was having some pretty good steam, but raising a kid is tough, which is funny because I'm probably shooting myself in the foot in the business side of how to look at it, but I'm over optimizing and over indexing for time with kid right now, and that's how I think. I've talked to enough people who are older, like you're one of them, but I've talked to enough people who are older who optimize and over index for making money, who regret, like their single regret is not having enough time with their kid when they were younger. And I like to take everything that I hear and kind of see if I could find a pattern and then just go do it. Like don't even ask
Right.
permission, look stupid doing it and just try it. So I've basically, after my wife's maternity leave, I've been sole raising the kid, from after I get home from jujitsu to when my wife gets back from her job because, everything that I do is e-commerce and SEO and whatever. So I can be at home, but in reality, I'm not doing much work more than maybe 3 hours during the day. A lot of my work comes at night when he's asleep, but that's also hard. It's just energy wise, like everything's a big energy management, and you know, my day is dictated on did I go to jujitsu and how many times did he wake up screaming at night. So how good is my sleep? But I would say that like I have spent way more time than most people have ever spent with their kid between the ages of like 0 and 1, and I'm trying to do that at least until like 2 or 3, and then I have to make that decision if I'm going to homeschool my kid because I just don't really think the whole public school system, the way it's run in California, is that great. And I think there's better ways. So it just depends if I'm going to need that time or I want that time. Maybe I'll put him in like a nature school or one of these like kind of alternative kind of schools. But I have no regrets over indexing for time with kid. It's really cool. Like I was there yesterday when he did his first steps. I got that on video. It's like I was,
Yeah.
and nobody sees the training that I've been putting him through, like putting like an exercise band under his armpits, and we're running around the house trying to build up his confidence, and then boom, like you get to see it come to fruition. I was like, that's what I'm going to take to my grave. Like I don't give a shit about having did I get that extra $15,000 or $50,000 a year? It does to me. It doesn't really matter because you can't take it with you. Like there's a great book called Die with Zero that I think everybody should read, and it was this guy. He takes this very like polarizing statement, but it's just like if you die with like $1 million left in the tank, you might be thinking you're doing your offspring like a solid, but in reality, you're just a loser for not living life to its fullest potential, and maybe dying with like 50,000 in the bank versus 1 million. It's like the money given to your offspring, that million, you might think that is a lot of money, but you're usually going to be giving it to them later in life when they're 50 or 60. If you live to like 80 or 90, that money isn't big enough of a delta to matter as much as say giving them 100,000 when they're 25 and they are able to not have to go and slog through a job that they hated or maybe try a different life path and then have that compound in terms of like awesome life dividends and stuff. So there's like these alternative things that you can be thinking about. So that's what I did. I was just like, I'd rather shoot myself in the foot money wise a little bit right now, see these moments, and then if I have to, I'll just double down later on other stuff.
Yeah, I was pretty fortunate. I actually, when the kids were little, well, my oldest was little, I managed to work nights. I mean, um, it wasn't ideal for the relationship because she had day shift basically, I had night shift, but I got to do what you were doing. It was like all day at home with the kids. Um, and it was is pretty special. And the other thing I wanted to say was that that time of them being impressionable and you leaving your mark on them is a blink of an eye. I mean, really, you're talking like 12 years old, maybe before that, probably. when that relationship is formed. Um, I mean, I yeah, I think probably. I mean, it goes by so fast, and I have had the pleasure of spending a lot of time at home with them. I've also had the displeasure of later on with my other two, uh, and my oldest for but being gone. My youngest, I was gone for I missed what was it, four of her six birthdays or something. I missed 2.5 years of her life when she turned four, which, you know, positively sucked, but unfortunately due to financial reasons and it is what life, I guess, and jobs and stuff. It was like I was going overseas all the time. But I try to make up for it. But you're right. I mean, it is a blink of an eye. And you you can't get it back. And even in your lifetime, if we consider we're 80 years old, right? We live 80 to 80, let's say that. You're talking 10 years, and then they'd rather hang out with their friends or something, maybe 12 years. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's
there's
a
a
good
great
call.
article by Wait But Why, and it had this graphic where it had like every square was a year of your life, and then it just went from like 0 to 100. And it's like most of us reading it's like I'm 35, right? So it's like here's 1/3 of your life already expired, right? And it's like you only have this much left, and your grandma, who like mine is 90, you might have 12 more times to hang out with her in the course of 2 more years. Are
Right.
you every time you see her actually like saying, "Hey, 1/12 of this experience is going to be gone"? It's like you go one more time. It's like there's a 1/6 of it gone. It's like all this stuff where everybody thinks that it's gonna, you know, life's gonna go the same way until it's not. And when you start putting actual numbers down, where it's like my dad's 65, it's like depending on how often I see him, I'm fortunate enough to see him. It's like, that could be 200 more times with your dad. It's like, wow, that's okay. Like maybe we should go plan that trip that we should have planned before, or do make sure we don't miss that hiking trip, in Yosemite, like all these
Right.
little things. And I don't want to sound like, hey, like, uh, I don't understand that I'm fortunate right now to be in this position. Not everybody is. And I understand that. I just want to say, like, you only get one life though, so figure it out. It's like you have to take control over what you can control, and if you don't like the situation that you're in, you have the power to figure out, because with the internet you have the power to figure out like what knowledge you need, who you need to talk to, and how you need to structure the life to get it. It's not easy as hell. It's hard as hell, to be honest. And I don't recommend anybody like go be an entrepreneur or anything like that, but I'm just saying it's like, I don't know, I'm a big Jocko fan, so it's like extreme ownership. Like straight up read that book. It's like every hardship in your life you have to figure out and overcome it. It's like nobody's going to come save you. You have to man your own boat.
100%. I mean, that's going back into spearfishing as, same thing. It's like, don't expect any lifeguard to come save you. Don't expect anybody. Get that shit out of your head. When you go to the pool and everybody's choosing a drink and at a pool party, pay attention to your fucking kids because nobody is going to save them. Like, I've I've saved two kids at pool parties. And my thing when the kids were little, like, jumped in the pool with them, right? Trying to be a big kid because at least I know if I'm in the pool with them, like I'm watching them and we're there, or somebody else's kid. But like, yeah, um, if you don't like your job and you're bitching about your job, um, what are you going to do about it? Put a plan together. Ask yourself where you want to be. Put your plan together and then execute it. My friend said to me one time we were boat bottom cleaning this bottom of this boat with a high pressure hose. We were like power spraying it or whatever, power washing it. And he's like, Brett, in 5 years, if we're still bitching about our job sitting here doing this, then it's our own fucking fault. And I remember he said that, and I think I was like 23, 24, and I was like, that's a really good point. And I literally went back to school because of that. And then, um, yeah, but I remember that it's like at some point you gotta fucking just make figure out what you can do. And that's the beauty of, I think, having a partner, is that, you know what, I mean, things were expensive here and we were hurting financially. Um, and I had the opportunity to go overseas multiple times. And I was fortunate though that I got to do that, which allowed my wife to be able to then work less and do that for the kids, which hey, it was the best of a bad situation. And she's a rock star and she has a real job and all this stuff like that. But so it benefited us. And all we really had to do was worry about ourselves as adults. But I knew the kids were getting what they needed, and then when I was home, I was engaged. But yeah, no, I agree with Jocko on that one. Yeah,
Dude,
yeah,
finding a good partner is you can't understate it enough. It's like my wife's a freaking rock star as well, and I can't do any of the stuff that I'm doing without her. At least just even being comfortable with a non-traditional type of work that I have, right? Or this like kind of
yeah.
like structure that we have as a family. She kind of goes with the flow, but also keeps everything in check. So yeah, having a good partner is legit.
I think
They don't
I
train
would.
you how to do that,
Yeah, no,
how
I
to
was.
find one, but you get lucky.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you just said, that because I know, and I'm sure a lot of people experience this, a lot of men with their wives, just our lifestyle of, you know, hey, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go there. We're all like little kids. We want to go on this adventure, and all this stuff. And it's like they hit the I believe button. Okay, sure, babe. What do you need? Okay. This is it gonna work out, plan it out, go, whatever. But I think with uh being an entrepreneur, your wife has to have an extreme amount of trust in you and your ability, because there's a lot of, I always say to everybody, like, I told my son this, and I think, you know, and again, I'm generalizing here, but like, what do women want? Women want emotional security. They want just security as a whole. They want to feel safe. They want to feel that they're safe to express themselves to you. And a big part of that is being financially safe, or knowing that a partner you can trust um, is going to make decisions, and there's a lot of vulnerability in that entrepreneurship. I mean, when I talked to you that time and you said, "Oh, Google changed the way they did their algorithm," I just dropped like some crazy amount of visits to my website, which that equals money. Um,
Yeah, that
and
was a six-figure drop right there.
Jesus Christ, I mean, that's
You wake up here,
nauseous.
it's like, okay, all right, now what do
Yeah,
I got to do? It goes back to the Jocko. It's like, good. All right, I got to change the way I did things. It doesn't really matter.
right.
Just funny. Like to
No,
me,
it's true.
like it used to. No, that stuff used to bother me. But the more you can kind of make sure you can still play the game is like the number one rule. Is like make sure that you don't do any like catastrophic gambles. But it's like you have to be kind of having a bunch of different uh, thought patterns of like what potentially can go wrong, and then try to have diversification where it's smart too. But then yeah, going back to the wife stuff, it's think about just in general, not even about finances and all that stuff. Just think about spearfishing. Like this is something that I wasn't doing when I met her,
Yeah.
and then for whatever reason, Mr. Crazy Pants wants to go, who also does the crazy like life stuff with the entrepreneurship, wants to now go in the water where there's sharks and big angry animals and mammals and stuff to try and shoot fish, and oh yeah, you can also and like just black out and die. So it's like no no woman or no partner is like that sounds thrilling. You should definitely do that. So that's been a challenge. My wife is, I think, for her coping mechanism is just don't listen to what I do. Don't really think about it too much. Never watch my videos, and she's like, if
Trust.
you die, if you die, I'll come in the afterlife and kill you again. So that's basically what
Yeah.
and that's why I've been Mr. Safety, even though I might not practice it as much as I talk about it. just because it's just challenging to do the Ted Hardy stuff like the way that he prescribes it out here in Southern California or Baja. But I am still like, I don't dive by myself. Like I took kind of like an oath, even though practically we dive by ourselves, you know, like when we're even with friends, you know, just because it's like
Yeah.
we're doing extreme snorkeling out here, you
I do
know.
think
I
that anytime we start to dive, actually
We buddy up.
dive, we buddy up
Yeah.
every time. Like, and
I
I mean
think to
actually
me it's a,
dive, like dive, like,
yeah, and I never push myself like more than like half tank on any even shallow dives. I just don't care. Like I know that that's letting me lose a lot of fish. Um, but like even Ted, you know, he'll say, you know, you can be in 10 feet of water and be down there for a minute and a half and you think you're like nothing bad's going to happen to you, but it's like your still duration of time is extreme, holding your breath and, you know, not having the oxygen and all those systems working compared to like going down 70 feet and staying down there for 10 seconds and you think you didn't do much, but it's like that delta of time underwater is still high, right? So I think
right.
to me, it's just like, don't push yourself too hard. And as soon as we start diving past like 40 feet and we, for example, like when you do the grouper stuff, it's like, hey man, watch my back. Like it
Yeah.
just, it doesn't
Things,
make sense not to.
no, things definitely changed when I got married. They changed a little bit. Um, I was still pretty selfish. I did a lot of big wave surfing then. Um, and then they really changed when my wife was pregnant. And I remember we had not a fight or anything, but I was going to go offshore. I was going to go dive the Coronados. And she was like, "Oh, so you're going to, if you get eaten by a fucking great white, Brett, and leave me to raise these kids, you know?" Like that was like a real fear that hit her. I mean, she was pregnant with our second, I think, or something. Um, and I'm like, no, we're just gonna go offshore. Like, we're not gonna go. Like, I'm not gonna dive the Coronados. I'm actually gonna just go patty hopping or whatever. She's like, fine. You're gonna get that. Then go deal with a fucking Mako or something. But it was funny because it was like the first time in our relationship where it was like that thought had entered her mind. Now that she was pregnant, and it was that fear. And I remember being like, God damn, like what's the, like been doing this, forever, and all of a sudden it took on a new kind of course. So along those lines though, I would say that I do make a point, and maybe it's a little bit, I don't know, over dramatic, but I make a point every time I leave the house after diving or going to diving that I tell everybody that I love them. And so I just don't want them to ever think um, they didn't have that last word with me. And if they did if they did have that last word with me, it was something positive or something. You know, that's all. Because I think that would be a much easier pill for my kids to swallow, knowing me, that they'd be like, that would be easier than just not getting that. Hey, I love you. You know, and I'll be back with a
Yeah,
white sea
we do the
bass.
exact same. We do the exact same thing in our household too. And I think
Yeah.
it's a good habit to always just say that. I also like have these like mental frames that I try to like employ. Whereas like one of them, and it could be a little triggering to some people, but it's just like it's not cool to die spearfishing. So it's like
Right.
don't try. Like don't try. Like no fish is worth your life. But you know, for me, I'm competitive. You know, and I've been trying not to be, especially because this is like the dumbest sport to be competitive in,
Oh,
because
100%.
like
So ass backwards.
you'll push yourself to death trying to get some stupid ass fish that yes it feels good and I love fish and I love my PBs that whenever I get them and it's cool, but it's like at the end of the day it's like, you know, it's still just a fish. If you leave your family hanging because you were selfish and you got yourself killed trying to go after that one fish, it's like, I mean, it's your life, you can do whatever you want, but you do have some repercussions there. Like it was challenging a year ago when I did my first dive after having my kid. Like I actually was timid to do any crazy dives. Like even going
100%.
down 20 feet, I was like, oh fuck, like this has a whole new stakes like to the game. Like, yeah, like, and this is not the best way to say it, but it's like if I died before the kid, right, my wife's gonna hate me, but at
Right.
least my wife will be able to,
Move
she's a
on.
very capable woman. She
Yeah.
can move on, and hopefully she'll remember me. But like as soon as you have the kid, it's like a whole different enchilada. So I started actually just like picturing my kid's face like before I took like dives, and I'm like, yep, don't push yourself. And I almost like trained myself to be like, just come back early. It's all good. You can stay down there for 30 seconds. You don't need to be down there for a minute. Just chill, whatever. Like if you see a fish, cool, shoot it. If not, don't worry about it. So it's like content wise, my whole and like how I'm progressing as a Spiro has changed dramatically because I'm just like not getting to that point where I give a shit enough to do anything crazy. It's like because
Yeah.
I see a lot of guys on like YouTube, right, who I respect a lot, and they're doing shit that I'm like, that's just not, it's not good. It's like, I mean, it's great for the content, phenomenal storytelling, everything's, but it's like, I just don't want to be watching you the day you die, like because you're on an island by yourself and you're trying to get that footage, and then it's like some bad shit happened to you, and you're just like, damn it, like
I think
it
honestly
wasn't
a
worth
lot
it.
of it is it's really kind of has throttled back um the progressive approach, I would say. I don't really know necessarily. Yeah, I haven't shot as I've shot a lot of fucking fish, but it's like I definitely when we are diving in Baja, if it's not great, I don't give a shit enough to go down, you know, 60 feet in murk and look and wait for that 100 pound group. I don't care. I really don't. Like it's fishing. It's an individual thing. Um, it's an individual thing, and it's supposed to be like fun and enjoyable for us. And I do think in that regard, it has definitely kept some trophy fish off my table. But when conditions are good, or for whatever reason, let's fucking go. We'll go for it. When I feel good, when I feel right, let's go. But I'm definitely not going to be I got to get down there to 100 feet. I got to do that. Like, no, I don't fucking care. And quite honestly, you watch enough things of people blacking out and dying, like a couple years ago, where you saw the dude's dive profile, bounce diving down to 100 feet, diving. And, that was important to him. It's not that important to me. I don't fucking care. I mean, I'm not going to be a really great free diver. Never cared about that. Never wanted to be a free diver. Just wanted to be a spear fisherman. Um, you know, and in
I'm
that
100%
regard,
in that camp, dude.
yeah.
I'm
What's
in
that?
that camp because I'm 100% in that camp of like, I think the free diving and the spearfishing worlds are blending to where it's like you expect to be this world class free diver if you're in spearfishing. And I like what you said a long, long time ago. You're just like, dude, I'm a spear fisherman first. I'm here to kill a fish. If the fish is at the surface, I will be just as happy as if I
Right.
was able to dive 100 feet to go kill that fish, right? And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are like, oh man, you're not diving to 120. You're not so and so. It's like, most of the fish are above 50 feet, anyways. They're all, I'm not trying to get the last small fish in some random sea. That's not my area. Like, I know how to kind of fish the zones that I'm in. Um, but also, it's like as soon as you go past, in my opinion, as soon as you start going past the 30-foot mark, every 10 feet, you're just increasing your chance of death. And I'm not saying like I don't go down there. I'm just saying, you know, you have to have that risk profile. It's like a black swan event would be you blacking out and dying. It's like if you know that most of the time you don't put yourself in those situations. Like, what does Charlie Munger say? He's one of my favorite investors. He's like, tell me where I'm going to die and I'll make sure I never go there. And it's like 130 feet is where I know I'm going to die. So I don't want to go there. I'm going
Right.
to stay up
Yeah.
at 30 feet. I'm going to stay up at 40 feet. I just
I mean,
like
we're lucky though where
increase
we
your chances.
live. Yeah, we're
Oh, I know.
lucky
Yeah, it's very
because
fortunate. Very
yeah,
fortunate.
yeah. But when I've gone to places where you got to dive deep, it's like, okay, let's go. But we're going to do this at a slow and methodical pay, and we're going to take obviously we're going to train. We train 3 days a week free diving to the point where it was like doing, repetitive dives to 60 or beyond, like it was okay. We're buddy. Like with the flip, we are safe, like very safe, when we do
Yeah.
that. But from blacking out and drowning. But I've had trachea squeezes and lung, all kinds of shit going past
Well, dude,
that
those are
deeper.
important to talk about because most people just think it's like, oh, you just got to figure out how to frenzel, and then you're just naturally going to go down
Yeah,
200 feet, with enough like reps. It's like your body has to be conditioned for that. If not, some people might not even be able to physically do that.
yeah,
It's
it's
like I know my
interesting.
diaphragm is annoying as shit. My diaphragm always messes me up, and that's just like I'm not a flexible person to begin with, like period. So it's like so much extra work has to go into doing that. Another thing,
Yeah,
it's like I remember the old guard telling me like every year that you're in spearfishing, just add another 10 feet, and that's where you should be able to be comfortable, right? So it's like I'm 6 years in, uh, 60 feet, in which I'm good. I'm good at 70. I have to push myself down there. Like I'm really more happy in the 40 zone, but it's like I can get to 60 whenever I need to. That's just like, and in another 4 years, maybe I'll push myself to 100. But a lot of guys and girls are like, you take a free diving class, and then you take, you have the time, you put in the time, and then all of a sudden, like you're in your first year going to 100 feet. I think you forget a lot of the stuff when you're not in the class out in the real world. Like I've just heard stories. I'm just like, I'd rather just take it slow. I like the long term game. It's like I want to be diving like Bill McIntyre at 80. It's like, so if that's the case, I still have 50 years of diving. Why do I
right.
need to get anywhere fast? What if my big fish is when I'm 40 or like when I'm 55? Fantastic. I just want to be able to get there.
Yeah, I kind of
you
look
know?
at it as like training up for a certain mission. Like, what does that mission require? Um, because I've shot a lot of damn fish. Um, and if I know there's a spot, like when I was in Guam, I was like, okay, we are training for deeper dives. That's what we are doing. We will do that. Here, that's like so off my radar. Although it's like those big grouper, right? 40 feet and beyond, like to the T. Okay, well, what do I got to do? I got to go down to 60 feet, go down to 40 feet, 50 feet, whatever, and sit there and be patient. Okay, that's the easy part. Shooting them cool. But as we learned on our last trip, now we need to go down and get them out of holes. We need to go down and free anchors in fouled anchors in good current, and we got to do it over and over and over again. And it's always at the end of the friggin' day when you're tired and cramping and exhausted. That's when shit goes south. But that's why you train. I mean, that's why I'm content. I'm not content, but I do diaphragm stretches every day just to stay where I'm at. You know, to go deeper, I'll start line diving and then really get that going and focus on that. If we're going to go somewhere and we're going to be doing deeper stuff like 80 feet, it's like, okay, I better start getting my shit together. But right now, every fish, I don't think I've pulled the trigger remotely close, like past nothing. 60 feet is, I don't know, it's been a while. It's probably all around 50 and shallower, you know? And then on our last trip, you shot a couple, what, you shot that. I mean, it was funny. I didn't see it because I just saw all the sediment going ape shit from under the rock when I went down. But you shot that. It looked like a big cabria, leopard grouper, and that thing went into the hole, and that thing was so wedged in there, um, going crazy. And you were you were taking a break, and I was going down there, and it was just like, yeah, you needed to have a good breath about you, and also that helps you. I think the other psychological impact of that is that you are calmer when you know you've trained, right? Like when you know you're good. Um, because that's a big mindset too, going down there. I think when we were talking about it, I said, it's so funny. My bottom time's like 10 seconds right now. And I think it's because I'm going down there and I don't know what I'm going to find. So I know I have to climb in this. I might have to go in here. I might not. So I'm kind of like sketched out anyways. And this fish is going ape shit. Um, and then you shot another fish, and that thing went in the friggin' hole and was like wedged so back in there. It was like two. I mean, that was, and it's always again at the end of the day, and yeah, that was, man,
That was definitely a day that I was like, I don't want to pull the trigger anymore because I'm too tired and gassed, and I'm having my buddy help me too much. Because I'm like, I either need to stone these fish, but I'm just like, it's going to make me change a lot of how I approach Baja, especially if we're going to go for bigger fish. It's like, I didn't have the right setup for that day, right? It was like, we weren't like, we knew we were going to go for some grouper, but in reality, it's like, your kid was going to be there. I didn't really know how much we were going to go out of the shallows, if we're just going to shoot cabrillas. So I just had, my 110, the Abellin 110 with the reel. But I'm like, if I'm doing anything deeper, it always should be a float line. It always should be like a, breakaway system, flopper, and like put the brakes on that son of a bitch as soon as possible, so it doesn't have a chance to go deep into the holes, because those holes are like Swiss cheese. I mean, they go, the caverns go so far back there, and it's like, if you're not on that fish as soon as you shoot it, put in some tension, that thing can run like crazy, and it's like,
yeah.
it's just a nightmare.
And then the other thing is, I spoke to somebody recently. He's like, I do a reel, and he shot like the 120 pounder. So they did with a reel. I was like, really? You like the reel? He's like, yeah, I just like it. It's, my thing with the flow line, the thing that I do like about the flow line is it makes it much easier to buddy you
Hmm.
if you have that flow line, because I know where you're at. And especially with the Viz being questionable, um, it just makes it much easier. For sure. I can see when you're coming. I could just, it's just easier all around. And I do like the leverage part of it. But yeah, I mean, all my grouper I've shot have been on real guns, I guess. And I've had them tow me, you know, you know how you hit them and then it's like kind of try to slow them down underwater, which really doesn't slow them down that much. It just kind of pisses them off and they're dragging you. Um, but yeah, I mean, you could pretty much just ride a shaft off. I think you shoot any decent size fish that go in a hole. I mean, that's just the cost of doing business. I wouldn't be conservative about that at all. It's just whatever it is, what it is. Um, yeah, but
Dude, I have been stoked for us going down on the little inflatable. I have been finding that to be like the most satisfying Baja trips we've taken. And
dude, we
I'm all
shoot
for
so
like,
many fish from that thing,
we shoot so many fish,
and we
and I'm
learned a
like,
lot.
we learn a lot. I think the thing that I'm like, I don't want to make it sound like we're taking away business from Pongaderos. Like, I love going on the Ponga. We've been doing the Pongas for a very long time. I just think there's a cost factor. Like, it's hard when they're now like $400+ a day. If you want to do a smaller trip, now it's like, it doesn't really matter if you're bringing 4 or 5 divers with you, but that's usually not how we roll. We roll like maybe 2 or 3 people, so it's like, doing that a couple of days in a row, that adds up really quickly. And then there's also this kind of like adventure element to having your own vessel, hunting your own spots, and
Figuring it out
I
by
don't know,
yourself.
it's the closest thing to like that Terry Moss book, where he's like talking about bringing his boat down, and they're like having the boat go down a cliff, and they're trying to hit new spots. I'm like, that's the shit that like is the real kind of adventure spearfishing to me. Not like, hey, we got our guys who are at these X different spots that everybody goes to, and don't get me wrong, if you go to the spots, they're awesome. Like, they're great. Like, the people are really cool. But to me, it's like, after you do that a couple of times, it's like, I don't want to hit the same spots over and over
It's kind of
again.
rinse and
It's
repeat.
hard.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's to me, it loses its novelty and its luster. So I'm like, oh, and now that we have our own boat, it's like, we've seen some shit that I'm like, I don't know who's seen this. I mean, people have. Don't get me wrong. Like, people go down there, live down there, but it's like, I wouldn't have seen it. Like,
yeah.
so to me, it's new. It's cool.
I was just cracking up thinking about that high spot we hit and the one rock sticking up, and it fucking smacked
Yeah.
the motor right into it. I was like, oh
Well,
shit,
it
we're too
idle.
close. Boom. I'm like, we're neutral.
Well, that client or that current was insane.
Yeah, we can
That
talk
was
about that. So, um, the current, on the Sea Cortez side, and for those of you who don't know, that the tidal swing is pretty significant. So anytime you get, it was a full moon, there's ton of current because especially being so high in the Sea of Cortez, that water um, delta from low to high tide is quite a bit and basically draining. And we went to these high spots that were farther out where the water's really moving, and it just really wasn't. I mean, yes, you could dive it, but we again looking back on the I don't want to die spearfishing, try to be smart about this. The problem we had is that we anchored and that you could barely keep in one spot. And so we hung a float line off the back, which we used to do in scuba diving for people that get like swept away by the current. So you can kind of hold on that, do your breathe up and dive down. The problem is that again, you shoot a fish, it holes up. Now, how are you going to deal with this fish having you got to deal with a current that's literally like a river. It was literally like a river. And you're going to have to do repetitive dives and you really do risk um, getting uh, like pushed against a rock, getting pushed under a shelf, dealing with all kinds of shit. It just adds another element of issue, of complication to it. So like we hit up two high spots and there was so much freaking current. It first of all messes the viz up half the time. Um, but I mean, the one spot I went to had so much potential. That high spot, it was oh man, there was a lot of fish there. But you just knew we weren't going to be able to deal with a bad situation as appropriately as we should if it was going to be bad with that current. Um, and then I had to dive down because the anchor line got stuck too in the rock. But we moved in closer to the the shore, which was actually less current because it wasn't out in the deeper water with so much water moving. So, and we still managed to put some good, decent fish in the boat. And you follow the same principles of go up current on the reef. Um, and I've heard people say this before, but it just keeps getting reinforced over the years. And I can't stress it enough to some of the newer guys. When you kind of get in the water, when you reach that fishy area. Like, I mean, when we got in that water, that island, and then felt the current, I kind of moved up and I saw some fish. But when I hit that line, like that drop off up that leading, that current, off that edge, that drop off, there was so much of every fish species just packed on that little drop off at the surface. Before it even got real deep, I was like, dude, there's got to be fish here because everything is packed up here and it's probably the same kind of situation going all the way down this thing. And sure enough, I'm sitting there and then all of a sudden I see a nice cabria swim like 3 feet from the surface. So I shoot that, come back, throw it in. Then I think that's when I was yelling for you guys to come up there. And then that's when we had like that hour we had good viz. Um, but that's where I shot the goal. That's where we shot all of our fish pretty much was on that spot. And it was quick, I think, for the relatively speaking.
I think what's really important too is like just understanding the tides, like when you're gonna go to Baja and like try to, if you're lucky, time it with like a minimal tide swing. Because I mean, that one
Yeah,
day that we
quarter moon.
went, yeah, that time that we went, and it was like crystal clear. Like it was the one time that I've ever seen Baja remind you of like the island, like Hawaii or something. You're just like, oh my god, I can see 50-foot viz, and I can see the grouper just chilling in that rock crevice. You're just like,
Yeah,
it's not even hard at this point.
it's
It's like
really
it's
not.
almost like you want the haze because the haze keeps the fish alive from because at least they can hide a little bit from most divers. But you know, that we are starting to see the pattern a little bit better in terms of like matching being there at the right time. Even a couple days before to make sure that the haze is minimal. Um, yeah, it's just yeah, all the little nuances, man. I think this is what makes it fun. I think this is the hard part that I have to kind of like deal with, right? You want to share information with people, and then you have like if you do share it, there's a lot of like people who will say like, "Man, why are you making it easier for the next generation?" And there's like, that how much do you keep things the way that they are in terms of like, hey, you have to go figure this out yourself. It will make it more meaningful, which I believe. But also at the same time too, it's like there's a lot of people who could have used that kind of mentorship who might not have that mentorship or help, and they might not be as safe as they could be, or they could be doing things that the community doesn't, it's not the best practices. So well, how do you navigate that, man? Because it's like you're in this weird zone where you're OG, but yeah, you still talk about stuff, and you can get hated on, and hey, why are you giving away the secrets and yada yada.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, first of all, I really do my best not to give a shit about what people say. I really do. I'm terrible at it, but I try not to. But I'll say this. I knew this information years ago from people that told me word of mouth, but I really truly didn't understand it and know how to and have it reinforced. I think until I don't know, maybe the last 10 years, 5 years maybe 10 years, just because I think it was a function of I'd go diving when I could. And the kids were little and I would just go when I could. I knew um and I had kids young, so I knew the rules, but it didn't matter. I had to go when I could. Now, as we're progressing, I have a little more freedom. And I'd say especially the last 5 years, those little rules that I think when those things lined up, with those conditions lined up, and I'd make a note, I go, wow, that's really interesting. I was fortunate enough to go to Baja during a quarter moon, and the current wasn't moving a lot. And we had some amazing viz. When did we have amazing viz? Oh, it's slack tide. Oh, that's cool because it did go kind of south after that, even with that. So that's interesting. So you stumble upon that basically, even though you already knew it. Kind of like when we were diving that evening and it was like raining fish everywhere, but yet we didn't see shit an hour before. But the reason why was because we know this, we exercise it here, golden hour here, all this stuff. But the problem is pongaleros always want to come back about 2 o'clock or whatever it is, right? We don't go out all day with and the fishermen, but in our little inflatable we do. And I think we came back in. I think that day it might have been one of the days we came back. Yeah, we went back out after going out on a pongalero with a pongalero and a ponga, and we went back out and then it was the same thing and it was like wow, okay, reinforced, noted. um if you have the ability to do this, just do this because it works most of the time. So I think I do it as yeah, I can tell you all about it, but really you got to learn it for yourself. You got to see it for yourself to be a believer, I think. I think it's like Christianity. It's like because I'm a Christian, shocking. It's like yeah, people go to church and they read the Bible and they kind of buy it, but I think until something really unique happens to you, you're not really you're not as invested as you would be. Like so, yeah, I can share all this information, and the thing is, the information's out there. It's already out there. Read a fucking book. It's on the internet. I mean, it's everywhere. So that way I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Like somebody say, oh, you're giving away the secret sauce. I'm like, yeah, it's not a real secret anymore. But I can give it away, but you're still going to be able to dive when you can only dive, and you're still going to do this. And then maybe when you get more free time, then you'll start to learn it for yourself and really drive home and then become a believer. Like that guy you talked to that said, I've shot thousands of white sea bass. He's done that process and he knows the rules and he developed his own little rule and when he can do it and when not. We have been doing that, and I've been making notes, and I know all the rules about full moon, new moon, slack tide, all this shit. Well, I've been, anytime a friend has got one, I ask him how deep, what was the conditions, and I make a note of it and the tide and the moon phase, and I see a pattern. I'm not going to tell you the pattern, but I definitely see a pattern, at least this year. Now, have I shot one? No, because I was in Indiana. Okay. No, I don't have the availability to capitalize on it, this year. I hadn't. When it was going off up in your neck of the woods, I didn't get up there till a week late. I was a day late and a dollar short, you know? Okay, but I made sense. The pattern made sense. So I don't really worry about that stuff too much. I'm just going to try to keep, um, you know, putting stuff out. And, I know, well, we can talk about this as far as the whole other topic about giving out information. The spot burning, John, the spot burner cast and spear.
Yeah, that was a brutal one.
Yeah, so we've had some chat. I've had some chats. Some people message me about you, and whatever. I don't mind any conversation. I don't mind a conversation. Let me say that. No problem having a conversation. Anybody about anything. But if you're going to be uh disrespectful or just not willing to have a chat and agree that maybe we're not going to see eye to eye on it. Maybe um, maybe you have some valid points, and okay, noted, cool. And maybe you're not able to put together a solid argument, and then okay, it's fine. But then you might resort to name calling, and then you can go fuck yourself. Um, yeah. So, anyways, John, you want to give a little background on this because this is your story to tell.
Oh, I mean, first off, I I'm not here to cause any controversy. I don't really care about that stuff. I really think that the spearfishing community is so small to begin with. It's like, what's the point of having kind of grudges or I don't want to rub anybody the wrong way. Um, but at the same time too, it's like I'm kind of tired of a lot of the content that this community puts out. Right? It's like it's usually the same thing: kill fish. It's not really much story. We all kind of do the same thing. Oh, cool fish. I'm like, why don't we just add some more context, add a little bit more like storytelling and some tips and some helpful stuff that I wish I had 6 years ago. So it's like I just thought about like practicing because I always like to just practice new techniques for short form content. So I made this video where it's like how to catch a white sea bass, right? So it starts with me just being like, apparently, if you want to catch a white sea bass, and all I did in that video was just practice different angles for my shots. I didn't even really care. Like, if you actually watch the video, it's the most like generic shit out there. It's like, uh, check the weather. Is it a cloudy day? Is it not a cloudy day? It's like I shot my 65-pound white sea bass on a non-cloudy day. Like you can shoot it at any, doesn't really matter, you know. But it was enough to piss off the white sea bass, like kind of tribe, which totally understand. I kind of knew that was potentially going to happen. I think I was a little sad because it's like I didn't run it. I didn't just like make it and just like post it up there thinking, yeah, I can't wait to burn this spot. Like I did my best to kind of hide where that spot was. Like I just put in rocks. Like it's just the coast. I didn't put in the exact location, GPS coordinates or whatever. And I shared it with like you and a couple other dudes and like OG guys, like old school guys. I was like, where is this spot? Like what do I need to take out? And you're like, oh, take out that clip. That's probably too much, but the rest is fine. And then I posted it and like instant hate. Like so much so that like one guy threatened me, was like, this is your first warning, don't ever go back. And I'm like, really? Like I've never seen you at that spot, man. But it's like it's chill. I don't it's all good. But I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd prefer you say it to my face, I versus, in the comments, which I don't care about the comments too much, but it's like
Yeah.
I'd have random guys DM me random things like whatever. So it's just sad because it's like it, there's not many content creators out here. I'm trying to be one who's actually respectful to the OGs. Like I know plenty of dudes who'd probably just be like, "You guys are past your prime. Get out of here." Da 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 da. It's like that's not me. It's like I've been trying to learn from everybody. I'm trying to do it the right way, but the world is moving in a different direction. Everything is online. It's an online first world now. And I think the guys who have tried to make an argument that I was like blowing up the spot and yada yada were always coming from an angle of, you know, I learned this the hard way. Somebody else should learn it the hard way, and we don't need any more divers. So, but it's just always like, hey, it's a scarcity mindset. This is my little like territory. It reminded me of surfing, right? I grew up surfing, so it's just like this is my beach, and you're just like it's actually everybody's beach. If you pay your taxes, it's and if you live here, it's kind of everybody's. You know, and I'm not here to say like let me just go inspire a whole bunch of people to go into that one stretch of California and kill every fish in the world. Like that wasn't my message. Like I'm not here to be like, hey, go murder a reef, and then they'll bring that up. They'll be like, oh well, if we have more divers, then we already have a limited number of dive spots because of the MPAs. Now you're going to just decimate everything when you can watch videos and pictures of like charter boats, and I'm not trying to shit on any charter boats or any of that stuff, but they're like pulling in like limits of white sea bass. like I'm like, dude, you know how hard it is to get like one to maybe like a couple a year as a spear fisherman? It's like, come on. Like it is a challenge to get in the water and even like sure, if I told you the answer and then like this is it everywhere you got to go and then are you just naturally going to go into the water like I can't wait to get in there and then magically going to shoot a fish? And even if you did shoot one, isn't that cool? Like you got your fish. Like that's what you should be getting. You're never going to shoot enough white sea bass. But I don't know. It's been hard because I've been trying to look at it from every angle. Um, and I did have one person really call me out in the DMs, and I was like, "What spot was it?" And they just told me a spot, and I was like, "That's not even the right spot." And you were like very confident that you knew that spot. Like
Right.
I know this spot. I can't believe you burnt it. And I was like, "You were off by quite a quite a ways." But I appreciate it. But I wish you didn't name call me like right out the gate. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
think
It's
there's
just
a
interesting.
couple
I
of
don't,
things.
I don't know.
Well, I think there's a couple of things because you got in hot water the first time when you
Oh, dude.
shot your first white sea bass,
Yeah,
right?
that was funny.
The one thing I remember about that video was not about the spot in the background that everybody fucking knows, by the way. Um, that's another thing. Because they said don't post, and I do agree with this, don't post same day pics of white sea bass because you and I both know white sea bass are either there or they're not. And it's no mystery. You just got to know where they are. So if you do know where they are, you can go fucking shoot one. Like it is what it is. That's why everybody went up to the Channel Islands and shot fucking white sea bass this year. Peter and everybody else, that we know went up there and shot. If you want to go shoot a white sea bass, go to the Channel Islands. It was pretty obvious. Um, and other spots, but it wasn't like that particular spot was getting blown up. Um, Referring to the new video, to the old video, to the new video, the video you just posted. Everybody's like, "Oh, you're blowing up." Everybody fucking knows it's a dive spot. It's not exactly a goddamn secret spot. Excuse me. It's not exactly a secret spot that stretch of the coastline. It's like saying La Jolla's got white sea bass. Yeah, dude. Everybody, yeah, okay. Point Loma and La Jolla, I just blew it up. You know, it's got sea. I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. It has just as much sea bass as anywhere else on the coast. Any other kelp beds on the coast. You know. Um, but I think they were justified being pissed off because it was the same day post and you could see the spot in the background, so people knew. People in that region would know. I mean, quite honestly, wouldn't know other than yeah, it's Palos Verdes. Shocking. Oh, it's a secret spot, Palos Verdes. Um, but so I think that was justified. But I was really honestly focused when you sent me that video was the sheer stoke in your voice of exhaustion and like I fucking did it. So you made a mistake. Cool. Yeah, because you were fucking amped. I get it, dude. Like, okay. Uh like I said before to you, Um, I don't understand. I get it. I don't understand the magnitude and the time spent on losing their shit on people on social media. Like, for example, that thing. Oh, fucking John blew up a spot. Okay, cool. Anyways, moving on with my day. I got shit to do. Um, but anyways, so that okay, cool, blew it up. And then fast forward next year. So everybody, John blew up the spot in his video the first year. The next day, I think somebody commented it was like 17 divers there or something, Um, yeah, yep, whoops, fuck me. Sorry. Excuse me. Made a mistake. Fair enough. Um, then fast forward, you made that video, and I thought it was so interesting because when you sent it to me, this the video that everybody lost their shit on again, which I thought was kind of stupid. Um, that the video, like you make the most generic shit, and people are like, "You're giving up the secrets." I'm like, well, if those are the secrets, those secrets have been out for a while, dude. They're like, make sure it's overcast. Like you said, the two fish that I know people shot this year was bright and sunny, but it's neither here nor there. Every fish that I've encountered was actually in the middle of the day, bright and sunny. Anyways, um, but yeah, sure. I've heard that same rule too with the overcast. And then I just kind of feel like to blow that spot up, you literally have to know that spot already. So the guys are saying you're blowing up that spot. Dude, the only reason why you recognize it because you fucking know it, right? And the fish that was shot that day wasn't shot that day. Like all you other guys out there, it was shot, and girls, it was shot months before, you know, but everybody wanted to ignore that rule and just say, oh, you posted it. But you were the same person that posted a fish you shot earlier this season. So I didn't really understood. I mean, I didn't really get it. Like you had sent that to me. I go, hey, yeah, you probably should take this out just to avoid it, dude. Like, don't even set yourself up for it. And then you posted it, you took it out or whatever, you posted it, and then it was like all this stuff. And then I kind of got to the point of like, I feel like there's like people have a hard on for you, like especially in regards to white sea bass. And then I thought, you know what? It's not you. It's just white sea bass because for us as Californians, the way we dive, the way we hunt this white sea bass thing, really what you learn is it's not hard when you know where they're at. Like it's not hard. So like yellowtail, right? Yellowtail can come and go. You might get lucky. They're more um, you can go to any certain white sea bass are such a dense concentration in one spot for 3 days or whatever it is, right there between this time and this time. So really they're kind of unique because it's a matter of trial and error. You go, 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 and then 1 week they're fucking all there and it's easy and you shoot them. So I heard a lot of people say, "Oh, I put time in and all this stuff," and I'm like, I get it, but like you're get all of that, but your video didn't do any of that, you know. So I didn't really get it. Like I had a good conversation with somebody, um, and he was like, "Oh, you're burning spots." It's like, "Oh, this is a white sea bass spot. Is that what it is? Like this is a dive spot. The spot that's in the video, that is a dive spot. Is it a white sea bass spot? I mean, any fucking given day, any spot could be a white sea bass spot. Like it's a dive spot." Um, so I thought that was interesting, his take on that, because I didn't really like. I mean, like you and I both had a conversation, and I sent him screenshots of fishing reports. The one I think you sent me, where it says white sea bass are here, bluefin here. Like it was drawn up, fucking Southern California, of all the spots the white sea bass are being to. Like the fish, I never thought in a million years fishermen would be more liberal with their spots than spear fishermen. Um, Like I just thought we were kind of all the same, but like you go in a bait and tackle shop or somewhere like fuck fish dope. I mean, they give away all the information. And I was like, well, what? Bluefin are obviously a little different, pelagic. They're, but it's still I'm like, okay. But then they're also giving away along the shoreline all the bites and white sea bass and all this stuff. But nobody's sending them death threats. Nobody's saying, hey, fish dope, shut the fuck up. Um, you're a kook and all that stuff. And I literally, because I did take it with a grain of salt, I was like, so why is that? I'm so curious about that. And I didn't have a good answer. I don't know why. I still don't.
One person who slid in the DMs and they were like really passionate about it, and I was just like, I like to debate. That's like one of my favorite things to do. So I like to just like poke and prod and try to get to the essence. Because like one of my rules, I told you this before, is like as soon as you call somebody a name, you lost the debate. Because to me, it's like you didn't have an argument. It's easier just to call somebody a kook than to actually like back up your statements and be like, I don't like X, Y, and Z because X, Y, and Z. And when I tried to really force that person to kind of give me, some rationale, it kept coming back to like, that's the way this culture is. These are the unwritten rules. This is the way it's always been. And I would always just be like, just give me the unwritten rules. Like, just tell me what they are, because I would love to just write them down. Is it never talk about white sea bass ever? Never talk about them if you do talk about them on social media in the months of May to, August or whatever it is. Like, don't talk about, or February to August. What are they? And it was just like, oh, you know what they are. You're just being facetious and da 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 da. So it was just always kind of like, I understand how things are. Like, I respect tradition. I respect culture. That's why I'm actually being somewhat respectful to try to not put out content that's just like, hey, here's the spot, go for it, guys. Like some people do. Um, but at the end of the day, it's like I'm not also just going to like blindly just keep doing the same way other people have been doing it just because that's what other people do. Like that's not my ethos. My ethos is like I just question like, you know, why couldn't we help some more people get started? Why can't we shorten the time? Like, I don't think it's necessarily that cool that I had to put 4 years into it to go find this fish. like it meant a lot more to me, but at the same time too, it's like I wasted a lot of time. I had fun out there, but it's like I stressed and like beat myself up by comparing myself to others for a long time, trying to figure out like how to get this fish. It's like I don't know. To me, I was just like I like I just do it from the content perspective. I like to make the video, and spearfishing is just the activity that I like to do the most. So I'm just trying to figure out ways to, and the white sea bass is the fish that got me into spearfishing. So it's like I'm basically being told by people you can't make content that which you like to make about the fish that you like the most in the area that you live. I'm like, wait a second, why? Just tell me why. Like, because that's how it's always been done. I'm like, well, then I'm sorry. Like, I'm not going to be bullied to not do something.
Yeah, I think to me the unwritten rule, right? Same day fish post. Um, and then along those lines is you don't want any terrain features so that you compare, hey, shot the fish here. Um, so to me, it's like, okay, cool. I kind of find it funny to post pictures making people think one thing and, throwing them off. That's kind of funny. But yeah, I do think like sometimes we see pictures of white sea bass and the background's blurred out or they swapped it, I know subconsciously I think, okay, they're out there somewhere. I need to fucking get in the water because I know, some of the guys that I know that spearfish, I know where they live. I know where they tend to dive. It's like, oh, I bet it's in La Jolla or I bet it's here. Maybe it's here. I don't know, but I'm going to go. So just them posting a picture, if it's the same, and usually if they blur the background, it'll be like within that week, or maybe the couple days, I'm assuming too. Maybe it's a day. And I always laugh when they're like, oh, this is one I shot last year. I'm like, yeah, right, dude. You shot that fucking, I'm not stupid. Um, so yeah, I think, like I said before, I think the first video you did was like, yeah, you were excited, you fucking made a mistake. Okay, so you got shit for it. Okay, cool. Moving on. Like I've fucked things up too, especially with this new realm of so learning the whole etiquette of social media for sure. Um, but then yeah, there's white sea bass. That's like goddamn. You're right. It's like a white sea bass video, dude. You just can't win doing anything with white sea bass. I think it's just such a touchy subject because when you figure it out, maybe it's like part of it is you either can go or you can't. So then people get frustrated, right? They're probably frustrated because they can't go. Or it's not that hard when you figure it out. And then it's like all of a sudden I'm not cool. Or man, it took me 20 years to figure this out. Um, and Jon is telling these guys how to do it. I don't know. I kind of feel like I said before, I don't think people listen that much. They get the general gist of it, but a lot of people go when they can go, you know? I mean, and then the other thing is Terry Moss. Like, no one's calling Terry Moss fucking kook. He's got a whole thing on it. You know what I mean? Like, you look at that stuff, you're like, well, I don't get it. Like, what? Like I said, I was gonna put that video or that book out, Spearfishing San Diego, and put spots like La Jolla, whatever. I was like, oh god, dude, I get death threats. I'm gonna just stay away from that. I don't know. But if you go to a dive store or any scuba diving map, all those same spots are all there. There's fish in the Pacific Ocean. There is. And if you find structure, you will find fish. And if you go at a certain time of year, you'll find a certain type of fish. And you could do all of that and still not find a certain type of fish. So I understand. I was just reading, a little bit of what the opposite opinion was saying, about this. And I don't necessarily disregard it or anything like that. But it's almost like they're calling a question. You're just talking about content. Well, why are you making the content? Why are you the one making the content? That's what clubs are for. This is literally, I'm reading this. Okay. It's like, that's what clubs are for and networking is for, not making videos for the public. So I kind of feel like, I don't know, man. Like I just feel like I don't like clubs. I read his thing and I was like, he makes a valid point. I'm like, okay, cool. But I'm not a club guy. Like I don't like clubs. Um, I do have a network that I did spend years developing, and I had somebody mentor me about the white sea bass thing. Um, One can say he's a terrible mentor because because, but so like Jon, are you just doing it to be the face of the franchise? Part of me says, okay, that's a valid point. My argument to that, though, is and maybe that's somebody's own personal. Maybe he's right. Maybe that's the way he looks at it. But what I have seen more often than not, and kind of figured out that everybody has a fucking problem with it when it's not them being the face of the franchise. This is what I have seen. The clubs, right? It's basically you got to be in the cool guy club, the Neptunes, the Fathomeers, like everybody's like running around throwing their Johnson out trying to see who's the biggest. Like I have seen it all. I'm not saying everybody is like that, but I'm saying like there's this like macho-ness to these clubs. And you want to be in that club because whatever to get mentored. I wonder how much mentoring is actually going on in those clubs. I do know that the club that gets shit on the most, there's a lot of mentoring going on. And you know exactly what club I'm talking about. Um, Up in the
The
old,
OC Sparrows.
yeah. So
Well, dude, it's kind of funny because I got into that club
uh-huh,
because I met one dude and I was like, oh, that's cool. It's like, yeah, I'll be part of it. I mean, I haven't gone to a meeting in years, but uh, it was always kind of funny that they do get the most shit on,
yeah,
because it is more open than not. I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier in this podcast, man. It's like everybody wants to be part of a tribe. They all have their identity tied up with, their little group. And if you challenge their group, you're going to get a fight. And like going back to what you're saying about being the face of the franchise, I don't want to be the face of the franchise. Never have, never like I just want, if anything, I want to push people to make better content. And if you're saying like, hey, don't be making content about this topic at all, that is a moot point in a digital first era, Like it's just you can fight it all you want. It's just like people are going to make content eventually, but eventually like you won't have the ability to kind of influence somebody to make better content. So I feel like I have like one foot in with enough OGs to kind of understand their opinion, and I actually care about the history. Like I've read Terry Moss's book, I've read Carlos Isles' book. It's like I've read a lot of forum posts. I also have a foot in this other world, where everybody's playing, everybody's on their phone. Every single one of the people listening here is probably on their phone a good chunk of the day, and that's kind of where your mentality is going to be. It's like it's what you're influenced by. I am just hoping, and I'm already starting to see it. It's like I'm starting to see people. The more content that I do make, I see better content coming out. And then like the other guys that aren't in Southern California, you know, they're moving the needle too for better content. But what's funny to me is like because I do have a pretty decent reach globally, not just here, because I don't make content just for Southern California spearfishermen. That's like the smallest fraction of my audience. But the people around the world have asked me multiple times, why is Southern California spearfishing so goddamn toxic? Like swear, like that is like multiple people. I had a person in Ireland, or yeah, no, it wasn't Iceland. It
New
was
Zealand, I
uh
thought.
well, I've had New Zealand, Australia said that exact same thing. Scotland, sorry, Scotland. Um, and they're just like, dude, is it really that bad? Because in like say New Zealand, or Australia, it's like you shoot some cool fish, like fuck yeah, man, like this is like the best, the sweet ass in New Zealand. It's like this is great, this is fantastic. More props to you. You shoot a fish and you post it here, and it's not like one of the big three: white sea bass, yellowtail, or tuna. You're a goddamn trash fish kook, And I'm
Yeah,
like, wait a second, like a sheephead tastes delicious. It's the first fish that most people are going to shoot. You'll tar and feather somebody who goes for an opal eye. God forbid you just want to try
yeah.
one, even though
Just don't
people
shoot
in
like
certain cultures eat it.
yeah, just don't shoot like 10 sheep's head. Like I've seen that. Just like take one
I agree.
occasionally. That's
Don't
all.
do that. But that's like education. Like people need to be hearing it multiple times. It's like a lot of times that happens from people who haven't really learned anything. They see a video, they go out and then they just go kill fish because it's legal. It's within the laws. But we could be making good content where it's like, hey, it's like sheephead are slow growing and they help the reef. Like you have to tell that to people hundreds of times, by different people, so then it becomes cemented in their brains for the new guys. Because it's
Right.
like it's crazy to think that you're just going to assume that new spearfishermen, which if we want spearfishing to be anything, you still have to have new divers come in. You want them educated like before they get in the water, right? And it's like, what is the education like? Like you're gonna hope that they go to a club and get accepted and feel the vibe. You're gonna hope that they go read Spearboard and not get disgusted by a lot of the posts. You're gonna like, how many different barriers are you gonna put in front of people to get the good information that has taken me years to figure out? You know what I mean? It's like I got very fortunate enough to meet you through Matt, and it's like that then we got on enough trips to where it's like I understand you, I understand your family. It's like I understand how you look at it. I vibe with that, and I vibe with how other people look at it. But it's like that's a very unique situation. Like that's
Yeah.
not the common path. So I don't know. I get riled up on this one because I'm just like I'm trying to justify. Like I don't want to. Like I know I shouldn't give a fuck about any of this. Like, and I try not to my best. But it's like same time too. It's like I respected a lot of people who really came after me, and I'm just like, really? Like, I'm just trying to do a solid
Yeah,
for
I think
my younger self who wouldn't have known this
I
stuff.
think one of the things that sticks out where I kind of came to the conclusion that it really was an issue for some people because it simply just wasn't them doing it when I saw Meat Eater on Netflix. I love the show. I got no problem with the show. It's great. Um, and they were with like some of the Team Rife guys or whatever, and they were diving white sea bass. And you know, um, if you know the spot, you know the spot. I don't know. They're out of Catalina. They're offshore, right, diving. And to me, I thought that showed just much more details of the spots diving for white sea bass, and I don't think they got any. So I think got a small one or whatever. But here it was on Netflix, diving for white sea bass at the island. All documented, thrown out there. Not one fucking person has said kook, this, that. Don't say shit. That's honestly was the biggest proof that I kind of had where I was like, this is your problem with your argument to me is that again, it's you where I kind of realized like maybe they're just fucking with you because it's the white sea bass and you messed up that year. But like nobody's saying that, nobody's outing the cool guys, if you will, right? The popular kids. It's okay for the popular kids to do it, but it's not okay for this new kid to come up with his entrepreneur ways and his little social media YouTube bullshit, right? And I get it if you don't like that part of spearfishing. Like I think somebody else said, YouTube spearfishing YouTube guys are ruining the sport or whatever. I totally get it how if that's your view of it, where you're like selling it out to the masses. Um, Across the board, if you're saying that, okay, cool, but you're not saying that about your friends that are all over YouTube, right? You're only saying that to address certain issues, but like your friends, your sponsor, the one that sponsors you, is broadcasting shit everywhere, and yeah, you have a problem with this video. It's just hypocritical to me. Again, not saying anybody's a fucking idiot. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's the problem with the argument for me is that it just comes across as, oh, if it's not you about you guys, then it's um then it's trash or whatever. It's like I just don't buy that. I mean,
I mean, you just gotta say, man, I'm not cool enough to make the content for the white sea bass. I have not shot a big enough white sea bass to make this worthwhile, man.
I don't know, man. Fuck, I haven't landed
I mean,
one,
I
so
got
yeah.
for slinging Johnsons. It's too small to represent the white sea bass club,
I
bro. I know this.
That's the
I want to make
establishment.
a joke, but I don't want to get in trouble on that.
No,
But
you're good. I know,
okay,
dude.
it's so
I'm
funny,
already
man. It's
swearing
so
enough.
good.
But I get it. Like, I get it. Like, I understand how people like, hey, YouTube, right? We got it. But at the same time, like, I got a question. And I had to ask myself this. And I'm asking, like, you guys ask yourself this. Why do you post your spearfishing stuff on Instagram? Is it for like this? Because the argument was made that, oh, it's John's trying to do self gratification. John's trying to blow up stuff. So why do you post on Instagram, right? Like you meaning
Are you asking me?
no, the listeners out there,
Mm.
whoever it is, right? I don't know all of us. Like, and I have my thing where it was like, um, I started doing it because I started recording stuff because it was cool because my family was afraid to go in the ocean. Now, like my wife was afraid to go in the ocean. But like now my daughter's going in the ocean, so they're getting used to my son. We experience all this stuff. But originally it started out as just a way to share, document a portion of my life, you know. Then it did transition into, hey, I got to make content because there's all these people that are relying on um not relying. There's people that are like curious and they follow me and they want to see what I have to say, whatever. So then it became, hey, I'm gonna post a picture of this fish, but I'm gonna tell a story about it, or I'm gonna say why. Something a little more meaning than just, hey, here's a giant thing. And then it became like, yeah, I think like I'm really just enjoying sharing all this with you guys because these people seem to care. And a byproduct of that is, wow, I'm getting more and more people to follow me. What I didn't like about myself, I'll be honest with you, was that when I started to feel obligated, is I got to post something now. I got to post something every 3 days. And then I'm like, this becomes very like, uh, very phony and fake, and I don't like it. Fuck that. I'm not doing that. And I did that for a while, and then I backed way off because I asked myself that question. I was like, I'm not gonna post shit just to post shit. Then it just looks like you're so everything I'm accusing John of, I'm posting stuff to gain popularity, to unless it's like to appease a sponsor or something. So I totally understand that. But like everything the argument about you're doing this and you're doing that. Well, why do you feel necessary to post all your pictures on internet? Oh, because you want to be popular, because you want to be all the things that John's trying to be. That's kind of where I'm at with that. But so, John, yeah, I'll kick it over to you. Why do you post on social media?
Well, I mean, I think it'd be I do like posting because I like to make the content. Like I've always liked video editing. I like the excuse to be able to go out and share and document stuff. Also, I run a business. Like I'm a red-blooded capitalist. Like straight up, if people don't understand that social media is business, you are head in the sand. Like yeah, you can post pictures on Instagram and use it as like a scrapbook, but like the real people who are using that to like social media to its YouTube, TikTok, whatever, it's all some kind of influence. Like we're mimetic creatures. Everybody wants to kind of see what everybody else is doing, and then if you identify with that person or you want to feel like that person, that's why you buy stuff. If James Bond wears a Omega, you want to feel like James Bond, you go buy an Omega. Like you didn't just say like I wanted that watch to begin with. It's like you saw it in a movie. You said, "Hey, I'm kind of cool like that," and even if you're not, and you go buy it to be cool. So the same thing with like the business side of things. I made the content. I don't have a sponsor. I am my own sponsor. Cast and Spear is the sponsor. It's the brand, right? So it's like, and that's allowed me to then start selling. Like I'm the distributor for a Bell and Spear guns. Like it's the spear gun that I like the most. So now I make content to sell spear guns. Like it's funny because like that one white sea bass video, I talked about my spear gun. Like this is the Bell and 130 and da da da, and that thing sold a bunch of spear guns. Like and now those people are super stoked. Like they're like, "Oh, I didn't
Right.
even know you can get this spear gun here. I've used it. Like I've seen it. I've seen the videos from the past. I thought they weren't brought in here." And I'm like, "Yeah, I had to go out, do the research, reach out to those guys, bring out samples, make sure I like the gun. And now that that's the only gun that I use, now I'm making content about it, right? So it's like, or how about the EKG May? I'm the largest EKG May seller in the United States. I've sold thousands of them, on Amazon. I've made content. I've had tens of millions of views on EKGme videos, right? So it's like I EKGme has be I have moved the needle to make that something that's not just some crazy barbaric looking thing, right? It's like I'm not the best EKGme person in the world. That's not my goal. My goal is like I found that method of humanely killing fish and I shared it on multiple platforms and now a lot of people talk about it as if it's like the thing to do. And I'm like, "Great. Fantastic. I hope everybody has better tasting fish." Like the little mark on the world. I hope that helps. So it's like that's why I post content. It's like I find out stuff because I love this kind of like just being curious in the world, and then I try to make stuff and share about it. Like the other day, I learned that there's certain types of good quality knives. I had no idea how deep knives go, and it's like, oh, did you know? I think it's like Zwilling and Wusthof are like phenomenal German steel knives, and they make some of the best stuff out there. Or you can go to the Japanese knives, and they have different angles. And if you're going to get a cutting board, you want to make sure it's end grained and maple, not side grain or edge grain, because it's going to dull your knives. Like all that stuff is just fodder for a video for me to make when I get a fish. I'm going to be like, let me
Uh,
educate you, because it's like I just found $2,000 worth of knives for $100 on Facebook Marketplace, and that was like one of my most shared just like pictures the other day. And I'm like, I could easily share that how I did that, how I found it, like all the education that I did. But it's like part of me sometimes is just like, do I really want to share it? I just get shit on. So I have to just that's why I just gotta block that out, because it's like somebody finds it valuable. If I help one person in one piece of content that I make, then it was worth it for me.
I
I just want
think
to make somebody's life because. Oh, good.
I was just gonna say, I think you hit the nail on the head. as far as you said, influencer, right? Influence. We are influencers, whether we like it or not. For me personally, the reason why I really got involved and really went full into it was I thought there was not good influencers. And so I jumped in to be a good, a, and again, this is self righteous, I guess, but what I thought a better influencer for spearfishing would be, that's the reason why I got involved, because I thought there was people that weren't great. Um, so my thing, I guess, is to you, it's like you're trying to do the exact same thing. You're trying to be an influencer in a good way. If someone has an issue with it, I honestly would challenge everybody. Like, if you think you can do something better, because I talked a lot of shit about a certain somebody, you know what I'm talking. I talked a lot of shit about a certain somebody because I didn't think he was the best influencer. So I try to put my money where my mouth is. Otherwise, I can't talk shit. And now I will say I respect the person for what they tried to do. I just don't think it was as genuine as it should have been. Um, but go out if you think you can do a better job. I just, because there's going to be people out there influencing, and I understand some of the guys say those things to try to help guide you, maybe teach you in their mind. They want to do that. That's great. And say, hey, this, that. If they want to threaten you and say, oh, this is your first warning, man, get the fuck out of here. Like, there's no time for that shit. I'll go on a tangent about that stuff. But, anyways, I don't even know the person. But otherwise, pick up a camera and start working and making content, because it is not easy. It's very time consuming. And just doing this podcast, I'm looking at the time and I just know this is going to be fucking 12 hours of editing, probably from start to finish. Not editing, but to get this thing out here. So people just, then you do all of that work and you put a product out there with the intent of, hey, here's some information. I'm offering it out there. And then you get people, it's not everybody. I don't think it's the majority either, but you get those people that talk shit. Okay, well, what have you done? Talk shit. What have you done for anybody? Oh, what? Oh,
Well, I think what's funny to me is
yeah.
like I'm one of the most open dudes when it comes to this stuff. Like, there's not enough creators out there to talk about this in this space. Like, I talk to a lot of people who are not in fishing. Like, they might be in tangential kind of spaces or whatever. But I'm like, I've been one of the biggest proponents to get people started. The thing that they don't do is consistency and commitment. And I'm just as bad. Like, consistency is hard. Everything is hard when it comes to like putting yourself out there, doing all this work that's behind the scenes that nobody sees. But it's like what you said, I would hand hold you to get you to where you need to be. And if you have sponsors, you should be talking to me so that I can be saying you should be using social media to get more views for your sponsors and be doing, like, that's the only reason why a sponsor has you, is because you have some kind of clout and some kind of following. And if you're not doing your part to help that business, then it's like it's only a matter of time before somebody does. And then, you might be the best person in the world, but if nobody knows about you, it doesn't matter. Like, really, you have to have both. And it's like, if you're not that good, then show your work. That's the whole point. It's like some people will find value in where you are in the journey. And like, there's so many like books that I could just like point you to, like Austin Kleon's Show Your Work or Keep Going. Like how to win or how to fail at almost everything and still win big. Like, there's so many different things. It's like, just, the knowledge is all out there. It's like you just got to want it and you just got to be consistent on it. And I would love to have more. It's not even competition. I think that's the wrong word. It's like, if there was 20 other spearfishing influencer, quote unquote, people in Southern California, I would be ecstatic, because it's not a zero sum game. It's a positive sum game. The more people that are in it, the more people watching content, the more interested people are in the sport. Everybody benefits. That's the whole value of the internet. But not a lot of people look at it that way. Everybody looks at it as like, oh, that's the guy who thinks he's cool, so let's shit on him. It's like you're not seeing that I'm like trying to show you that there is a route here. Like, you don't have to have a traditional 9 to 5 if that's not what you want. Like, there's another route, or you can go make a decent living. doing what you love. Like there's so many different things you can do in this world. And I'm not even saying do it on spearfishing, you can do it on anything. But there's skills that you should be stacking and having a bunch of skills and continuously learning, and your life's going to be better. Like,
That's a good point. But I think there's 2 points to kind of in defense of the opposition, if you will. Going back to our culture here in Southern California that people say is toxic, which I do agree. It's a weird clicky vibe thing, and it's really dog eat dog. But I have to take a step back from animal training and go, why is that? I haven't run the numbers, so I don't know. But population density and with the closures and stuff, like you'd said, people don't want the sport to grow. That's one thing, right? Like it's like surfing. Do we want more and more surfers? No, surfing sucks. Don't ever start, right? That's like a little joke. But I mean, like, we don't want those people that would say argue we don't want the sport to grow. So I'm going to table that for a second. But with here in California, like was Australia has half the population of the state in a country the size of the US, half the population of California in its size. So I think what we're having here is just classic competition of resources. So many divers, limited space, and people are just feeling it, right? Like they're just like I definitely have seen it over the years. Like all of a sudden there was like nobody in the kelp bed. And then nowadays you go out, there's 4 boats and they're diving, and you're like, wow, I realize I haven't seen as many divers in a while. So I think that's one end why people are like that. On one hand, why people are like that. On the other hand, um, I forgot the other point I was making. Oh, about people joining. Right, we don't want the sport to grow. The thing about that, though, is that there is an argument, and it's a pretty good argument, is that we want people to be interested in spearfishing. We want people to give a shit about that. We want people to fish more. We want all these things. Why? So this is why. As they're trying to limit, we have an uphill battle against all the environmentalist groups. People still think we're like savages for shooting fish. So the more people involved in that fight, and the more people that maybe they don't even spearfish, but the more information we can put out, we can alter the dialogue and a little bit more to more favorable for us than someone that doesn't know anything other than the fact that we shoot fish and kill them. We can say, hey, I mean, I have a lot of friends that are like, whoa, I talked to Brett. He's not like a savage killer. Wow, he like cares about the fish and all this stuff, and it's really about respect. Um, but people still think that we're like these, environmentalists, all the extreme environmentalist groups here in California want to do that 30 for 30 thing and shut everything down. And the more people we have that give a shit, they're going to be the more people we can get either the dive or husbands dive and or they don't dive, but they're just familiar with it. They follow maybe, oh, I think it's amazing. Like how many people follow us on our social media platforms that live vicariously through us that don't even spearfish. It happens all the time, but it's the only interaction they have with spearfishing is seeing our content.
yeah, and I
That's
mean,
it.
I think you are followed by Donnie Jr., right? So that means you're just like 1 degree away from the last president in terms of like having a connection and the ability to like potentially show up in a feed, which blows my mind because if I was an environmental group, right, I would just be taking all of everybody's content that they're currently posting, which is just killing fish, and put a narrative around that saying like they're all barbarians and they're trying to deplete the ocean, and we're not going to have any oceans for Greta to and all of her next generation to enjoy. You know, Whereas if we started to be like, no, we should actually be more thoughtful in our content, not just not post, like you said, because it's like if you just don't post and you don't have anybody care about this outside of our little community, and as everybody gets older and phases out of spearfishing, then any regulator or whatever could just come in and just wipe it because nobody's going to fight back, right? So to me, I'm like, make content that actually tells the story of why this actually matters. What it means to you, why we're taking care, why we're stewards, why we're guardians of the reef. You know what I mean? It's like not just we go out there and kill fish. No, we actually go and have sustenance. We try to be one with nature. This, if we do it right, we actually aren't killing the fish or killing the reef. All these things could be have narrations and stories versus like I only want to see you blast the biggest fish and wipe that fish from the reef and not give you any context about it. Like, what are
Oh
you
yeah.
doing? Like, please. Like, if you don't, somebody else will. And the other team, quote unquote, if we want to play tribal, is going to, we're already, like you said, an uphill battle. So be better than everybody else. And that's the only way you're going to do that is through better content. As much as you don't want to do it, it's like then find some help, at least elevate the people who want to put themselves out there, and help guide them. But don't just like instantly call somebody a kook for trying to spread the word about like the thing that we like to do.
Right. I think how many times when we were younger, growing up, that we see someone that was popular, that was good at something, and you instinctively want to hate on them when
All the
you
time.
all the
Like
time, and then you
it's just
look at it, you're like,
natural.
oh, I'm just jealous. I totally am envious or I'm
Oh yeah.
jealous. I used to root for Kelly Slater all the time to lose, you know,
Ah, dude,
and then
all
it
the time.
got like I just want him to lose,
He's
lose,
probably
lose.
like probably one of the better dudes in the world. Like just
Yeah.
like
Well,
a
I mean, he
human
was
being,
like
it's
good
like ah,
looking. He's like good looking. He's from Florida. He's not a California kid, and he's so friggin' good. You're like, I just wanted to lose. I just wanted to hate on him because he was like too good. And then you realize as I got older, I was like, I just want him to win everything. you know? And
yeah,
it's just, but you always have to ask I always do like a self check, man. Like, oh, I'm just really jealous. Is that why I'm hating? Like, I have to do that with Ocean Ramsey and her redirecting sharks and stuff. And I'm like, no, my issue is that she's basically trying to sell snake oil and like she's really full of crap. And I can say that because of this, this, and this. Okay. But is it a little bit of your, is it because of jealousy? Because she's like, yes, 100%. For sure. It's totally human nature. Get it. Yeah. Okay. Maybe
I
don't
mean
go as
that to
hard.
me that's the well, like you just said, it's like I know that there's OGs and people who've been doing this for a lot longer than me who are like John sucks at X, Y, and Z. I totally understand that. You know, my thing is just like, okay, cool. Like educate me. I'm always down to listen. And then uh if you still don't like what I'm doing, just do it better. But it's
Right.
like you have to have that kind of, ability to put in the grind and go. Otherwise it's just noise. It's like
Yeah. I think that's a good point, and a good point to end on, but I think it's a good point. Like, everybody that DM'd me and was able to have a good conversation, I really appreciate it. Do I agree with everything you said? No. Do you agree with everything I said? No. That's okay. I really do. I hope this podcast starts this portion of it at least, like starts just a conversation and gets everybody like take a step back. Like, man, I got some good points. Maybe not. I don't agree with Brett on this. That's fine. But just always, if you come at people respectfully, like I think anybody's bound to listen. And then I think for the guys that are old school and they want to keep saying a certain way, I would just say, you guys, if you come at it respectfully, we can. I mean, I guess the argument was, oh, we already told them once about the got it. If they didn't do that, it wasn't the same. Like, if you come at it respectfully, people are going to listen, and you too can be influencers um, of the influence. You can influence the influencers, great, and we could do things better for our community. So I mean, just keep it respectful to everybody. Like that post with my son, and the one dude was like, teach him how to. How about not teach him how to do this or kill this fish? And it was like, and then I said the context, and I remember you were like, does nobody care about the text of anything. Like,
Fish was dead
uh,
before he EKG'd it. We were
yeah,
showing him
like
how to
it
do
was
it.
just showing them how to do it. Like, and nobody even paid attention to it. It's like, dude, and
You got
then
to
it
be
just
mad at
got,
that big group. You got to be mad at the big grouper that killed it on the way up.
dude, that thing was
It's
big,
like
man. Yeah.
I get it.
But I think the biggest thing is, yeah, everybody just be respectful. Jesus. I mean, I understand where people are coming from. But like, again, just talk normally. It shouldn't be a problem, you know? That's all.
Yeah,
But,
just for the record, I respect everybody who's blazed the path before me. I'm not here to be the quote unquote the influencer, but if I do have the skills to get reach, I would love to always have your opinions to help navigate what content goes out. It's hard to come up with ideas. It's hard. Every aspect of making videos and content is challenging unless you've done like if you haven't done it, it's very hard to kind of like grasp how hard it is behind the scenes. But if you're interested in learning about it, I'll show you my process. Maybe you can help make things easier for me. It'd be fantastic. But I just want to make sure we have a good, vibrant community here. You know, that's just and be digital, have some kind of digital plan. You know, because it's not going
yeah,
anywhere. It's actually going to be bigger than for the real world. So
I think that's kind of the point of having a podcast is to have some of those OGs on to give them a platform to share their thoughts. The problem is some of the dudes you hit up, dudes and girls, whatever guys, you hit them up and everybody ghosts you and they don't want anything to do with it. But then they want to be pissed when you put out something you don't like. You know what I mean? So, but
and the
unfortunately, I haven't had
younger
that happen
generation
much.
doesn't want to listen to long form podcasts all the time too. Like some
No,
do,
I get
but
no.
so that's why it's like, you know, short form content. That's very challenging to convey a message in less than a minute. You know, that captures
Yeah,
somebody's attention within the first 3 seconds. You know, it's like we can go into another episode on all this stuff, but
yeah.
I have to
We got to
go
wrap it up.
get some sleep, man. Gotta go for tuna in a couple hours.
Oh boy, it's for anybody's information, it's 1:30 right now. So yeah, I gotta go to bed too. My wife's out of town. This is what I do. So
Cool. Well, man, if you guys have a chance, come say what's up. I'm on all the social media platforms. It's Cast and Spear, CASTANDSPEAR on everything TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. And if you guys are looking for a new spear gun, check out the Abellans. They're freaking sweet.
it is. Yeah, Bellin's a nice gun. It's call it the Ferrari, the Lamborghini of guns, I guess. Yeah, thanks, John. Again, have a good night, sir, and let me know. Good luck on the tuna tomorrow.
Cool, man. We'll do.
All right, good night.